formal kind of first step in research, and they're very useful for just trying to get people's reactions to a situation. And tonight we're going to be talking about a conflict. Kind of first. Or why do you like this coffee, or why? So it's, consumer choice, decision making, all these things, and it's kind of a whole lot more interesting than kind of strict survey, where yes, no types of questions, because you kind of get to talk it out, talk out with it, and it's perfect for what we're kind of doing tonight. Which, as we went back and forth on the emails about participating, mentioned that we're going to talk about a legal case, essentially a conflict between two parties over a topic. And you're going to, in a way, be the jury for it. And you get to assess the information and kind of weigh it one way or the other and take a look at it. You're going to have a little bit of hard work because you're going to have to kind of think about some kind of legal concepts and apply them to this story. But that's what we do if we're on a jury. There's no special training for that. You're not selected because you have some particular background, or it is generally the peers, of a community are hearing a presentation from both sides, and then coming up with a little guidance from the judge about the law and what's applicable, coming up with a decision. And then a civil case, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, not a criminal case, there's really two steps to what a jury does. One is they determine who's responsible or not, because really a lawsuit is one person saying this happened and this other person was responsible for something that I've lost or have been hurt or what have you with it. So it's the plaintiff and the defendant. The other thing is, if that decision is, the defendant did, depending on how the responsibility side of it goes, then there's a second part of it, which is the damages discussion. And that, you read about that in the paper, lawsuits, this amount of money, those types of things. Juries decide that. That's part of what their job is to come up with the evaluation, if they get to that point, about what damages are. So tonight we're going to walk through both of those steps, and if we get to the second one, then we'll deal with it. If we don't, well, then we won't. So just like a jury would do. So pretty simple, straightforward stuff. Tom, I'll start with you. We chatted a little bit, but we'll just get this on the record. If everybody would turn their name tag towards me. Yeah. Tom, how long you live in the area and type of work you do? Not, well, you can say where you work, but you've already talked about it, but I'm not interested in it.
3.5 years I've been in this area.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was here also in the 80s for 8 years.
Okay.
8.5 years, I think it was. 8 years.
So you know the community well?
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
And I own a coffee shop in Goose Creek.
Small business owner.
Small business owner,
Okay.
Navy vet.
All right, good. All right, thanks for coming out. Lori, how about you? Same two questions. How long have you lived in the area?
Since 2006.
Okay.
And I'm a realtor.
And you're a realtor? Okay. All right, good. Courtney.
I've been in Charleston since 2006.
Okay.
I'm a teacher.
Teacher? Okay. All right. Denise?
I've been in Charleston since 2000, but I grew up West Ashley.
Okay. Yeah.
So I grew up here, went away, and then came back.
Right.
I'm retired, and I sell Tupperware.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right, good. All right. And you bring cookies.
I bring cookies.
And you bring cookies, which is appreciated. Okay. So,
My name is Sue. Well, second name Sue. Yeah. I've been here since 2020. I'm retired from the school district in Delaware.
yeah.
Yeah.
In Delaware.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
20 years in IT.
Yeah. Oh, really? Wow. Okay. And then here, was this your choice or family? Or?
My son said, if I come down here, we'll build a little granny pod, and so I live behind him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
my husband has early onset Alzheimer's.
Okay.
So that's the reason I'm retired.
Yeah. Yeah. So working with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I think it's
that's
touched a lot of families. I
Yeah.
know that issue myself. All right. Well, tonight Let me introduce you to kind of the basics of this. And it involves a woman whose name is Mary Jones. Okay. Now, Mary's 66 years old. Mary is divorced and decides to, feel free to take notes, decides to relocate to Charleston. Has been kind of lived on the West Coast, comes from a rather well-to-do family, and just decides really kind of, 2018 or so, going to change life, get out of there, what I know and all this, and starts looking around and decides, well, Charleston's where, she wants to live. So begins shopping around for a house. So, and buys one kind of in a very exclusive and well-done area, just for the purposes of our story. That's all we need to know. But pays right at $3 million for the house. So significant house, 6,000 square feet with it. The house, this is 2018. The house is about 10 years old. Previous owner, all that, custom built, all that, with it, and moves into the house with it. Excited, of course, new life, new place, new city, great, wonderful house, all these things, look really exciting, and begins to kind of settle in. Now, a couple of things about her. She comes, as I mentioned, from, well-to-do family, and has always been in that well-to-do situation. And one of the things that she happened to have is a lot of art, and really appreciated fine things, and put, of course, in her house, her collection. And many people who'd seen it kind of refer to this is museum. I mean, this is a really nice, it's just this beautiful. They're really impressed with what is there with it. So she kind of give you a little, let's put some faces to this, if you like. All right, let's all act right. The screen is not. Hold on, guys. Okay. Technology. We need an IT. We need an IT director. Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's Mary. Mm-hmm. So Mary moves to Charleston, buys a significant house, 2-story, 6,000 square feet. She kind of has a boyfriend at this period of time, with it, but mainly she's kind of there in the house, by herself. Now, when she bought the house, she looked at the. Lori, is there something?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm listening.
Okay. Well,
Sorry.
yeah, no problem. She saw in the inspection report and everything when you buy and all the stuff that you go through with it about the age of the HVAC system in the house, and that it was 7 kind of plus years old, and there had been made a kind of a recommendation that you kind of might want to look at it and possibly check it out and make sure, which she does do. So she contacts a kind of well-known local company, A1 Heat and Air, right? And gets an assessment of the units and their lifespan and all of this. Hey, you're good. Come on. No. Be there. Yeah, be there next to Tom. So great. It's okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. And the secret magic marker over. All right. I'm glad you got here. First names are all you need. Okay. So she contacts the heat and air company and says, "Come look at my stuff with it. I want to get a sense of what I should do." New home, new to her. All right, Michelle. And they come in and say, "Look, you need to replace this. You need to replace these systems." There's a whole lot. Technology has changed in terms of the HVAC system. There's a whole lot. You control the situation. Big house like this, you're living in a kind of a human client. All these things. So there's lots of different things. These are the previous technologies. So we need to heat and air. Let me catch you up. Mary Jones buys a house. Here's the house. It's a big house, right? Mary decides that she pays over $3 million for it. She decides that she's going to replace the heat and air systems in the house with new ones. She calls a company. They come out and give her an assessment, and she agrees. We're going to replace them. So essentially, as they get in there and start dealing with the duct work and everything, they do a pretty expansive job. One part of it, HVAC systems, I don't want to assume everyone knows what HVAC systems do, but I also don't want to, that's the heat and air conditioning unit. Now, there's lots of parts to an HVAC system, from the duct work, to the air handler, to the air conditioning unit. All of it works together with it. And because of the size of the house, the recommendation is that there's essentially almost 12 units they say are needed to put in this house that will actually drive the different zones, floors and zones within the house with it. So she agrees. Very expensive proposition to do. They also said, look, there's a crawl space under the house with it. And in order to really control the humidity and everything, you need to what they call encapsulate it. Now, encapsulating is a very specific process from the HVAC side of things. Here's the definition of it. It's the process of lining your crawl space, with heavy-duty polyethylene. The polyethylene barrier covers and seals the floors and walls, and in some cases, the ceiling of the crawl space with it. The idea is to control the humidity, right, of the crawl space, as well as to keep animals, critters, from being in that area. And they recommend, and she agrees, to put a dehumidifier in there. This is where air gets trapped, right? And the way the dehumidifiers work is they kick on, just like a thermostat, when they sense that there's so much moisture in the air, and then they drive that moisture out, okay? Right? Familiar with this process? Mm-hmm. Okay, encapsulation, not something. The air handler, I told you there were 3 of these that were put in, for it. The air handler, that's responsible for circulating the air, okay? So this taking the air and moving it around the house. It pushes it through the ductwork of the house. So it's a pretty simple, but it's a closed process that essentially cools, recirculates the air, then cools it down at the coil, and then circulates it back and all that. So an HVAC system is kind of a total, we all have them in our houses, right? Okay. But the components of them are unique. And this is a very big house with it, okay? Now, let me stop here and ask anyone, just in terms of their own familiarity, about how decisions are made about the size of the units that should go in there. Are you familiar with any of those terms or things like that? Tom?
BTUs.
BTUs.
BTUs meaning?
British ton,
Right. Which is?
which is a certain amount.
Yeah, right, yeah, right. It's
But they use it based on
Power.
how much area you can cool with it.
Right, right. So there's calculations that go on in terms of how big a space you have, how big it is, and what is it going to take to heat and cool these, areas, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a normal thing to do when you're coming in and actually redesigning or putting in new construction or thing, is to measure the space And it has what kind of impact would you think? The size would impact?
The cost
The cost, yeah,
and the
absolutely.
effectiveness.
The effectiveness of it, exactly. So anything else that may impact it, just from your own experience?
Electricity.
Like I said,
Yeah, how expensive
power.
it's going to be to run and all those good things with it. So, yeah. So the company puts this new unit in, they redo the ductwork, they do the encapsulation. They have some contractors who are working with them, but they oversee this. They design the system. They make the decisions about what's required here. Now, one thing about Mary, although she's worldly and has traveled and knows art and lots of things, she does not know house construction. She does not know. So she is, yeah, okay, this is great. Thank you very much. We're going to pay this. So she looks to their expertise to provide for what she needs, right? Moves into the house. Everything is going fine with it. Gets into the house about the end of August, the 1st of September with it, but notices that there are water droplets on the registers in the ceiling. And says, I'm not from here, right? I wonder, it's hot and humid and all that. It's early fall, it's cooling off. What's happening? Calls the company, who of course has warrantied the equipment, right? And they come out and take a look. And they say, well, what we need to just change the registers and put vinyl registers in rather than metal. The metal registers are there. And we'll check it all out and take a look at it and make sure that everything's fine. They go, and everything seems to be fine. Everything seems to be working well. Fall comes, winter comes, spring comes, heat comes, right? And all of a sudden she notices, again, the water droplets and the feeling of very, very damp conditions throughout the house. She also begins to notice that some of the molding is pulling away from the corners, that some of the shiplap ceilings are cracking, that there's mold that's kind of appearing in certain corners of doors, paint seems to be bubbling up. The house is extremely cold. In fact, the walls are cold to touch, and begins noticing as the weather warms up and warms up that there's something wrong. She begins to not, actually, she kind of gets a sore throat, kind of doesn't even, kind of feel well as a result of it. And throughout the spring, she's back calling the company to come out and look and check it out and see what's going on. They say, oh, well, we've made some adjustments in the thermostat and these types of things, and everything's fine, and it's going to be, just keep going with it. It gets hot outside, and there's a lot of humidity in the air and all these things, right? Towards the end of the story, she hires someone to come and do some work around the house. It's not a heat and air specialist, but he notices as he's poking around and doing some of the work that something isn't right with it, and he tells her that your HVAC system is not working correctly. There's a problem here. This should not be happening. The dampness, the problems with the floors buckling, things, the cornices coming apart, these things should not be happening. That you need to look further into this, which she does do. Brings in an expert to take a look at it, comes to find out that the units that have been installed have had a variety of concerns. There's not enough there in order to drive the air conditioning correctly. There's some duct work that was incorrect and wrong. We'll look at what it is. and that the encapsulation under the house, that the dehumidifier and thing never worked, and that there were split seams and all kind of problems. The point of is that the house had kind of become a rainforest. One of the biggest problems was that they had vented a cold air vent into the attic. So when the attic reaches 140 degrees in the attic, right, and there's cold air is being pumped in to the attic, creating essentially a cloud, which is then pushing moisture down through the house. Also, the air exchangers, they had these super fast, these is kind of the new entities where they would cool the house real quick in order to be very efficient. They weren't set necessarily properly correctly, and they were cooling the house real fast, but they kept on cooling it. So they were actually keeping the walls really cold, which was trapping moisture behind the walls with it. So the house as a whole was impacted. That was a major concern to her, but the other concern was not only was her objects, art, furniture, antiques, all impacted by the moisture, the excessive moisture in the house with it, and her health. Concerns about that. Okay, all right. So she decides, here's the conflict, and we'll go back and replay this now that you've got the basic of the roadmap. She decides that, this has been incorrectly installed based on an expert and all, and sues A1, right, HVAC company, not only to have these systems replaced, but also claiming the damages in the house for it, the damages to her property with it as a result of it, as well as the damages to her with it. Moves out of the house, packs everything up, goes and rents another house, and begins to try to figure out how to salvage the house. So is no longer living there. Okay, so you see the conflict. All right, let's take a minute and talk about how we should process the, what's that?
Just need to use the restroom real fast.
Yeah, go ahead. How we should figure out what information is needed to try to resolve this, right? What questions come to mind as you hear the story? Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I haven't heard the other side yet.
Okay. All right. No, not yet. But as you hear this, what questions come to your mind?
Well, first of all, I think she should add somebody knowledgeable there in the first place.
What do you mean?
Because she didn't understand how these things work.
Right.
She couldn't make an intelligent decision about what to get and
Right.
how it should work.
Right.
And like this guy that come over to do some work, if she had somebody like that,
Right.
then he would have been able to sit there and assess what they were saying and look at their proposal to see if it would work or not.
Okay. All right.
Not really.
Go ahead.
I mean, you hire this company, they're experts.
Right.
So you are expecting them to provide expertise information to you.
I agree.
I mean, why hire an outside party to oversee an expert? So you got two experts, it costs more money.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, I'm looking at it as a financial side, to hire an expert to watch over an expert company is ridiculous.
Okay.
A lot of people.
I'd want to know what kind of licenses they had, the
Okay.
HVAC company.
Yeah.
Well, the company
Whether they were
here.
licensed and
you know,
whether or not they had
Right.
experts that were actually experts or just thought they were experts.
All right, A1 Heat and Air. I mean, here it is. I mean, they're open 24 hours. This is a big operation that operates regionally with it. So they have
Okay.
Right. They have technicians that are on call 24 hours a day. They have designers, HVAC designers on staff, sales, service, design. They do the whole package. New construction buildings, commercial, residential with it. Decades in business with it, so have been around regionally, for a long time. They hold themselves out as an expert in design and installation and maintenance with it. They say that's what we do. We are licensed and we are trained, and we hold certificates of various companies to install and service their material, right? no job is too big. We'll take it all on. We've been around, we've got the equipment, and they're considered one of the largest in the region, okay? So it's not John and Phil,
Right.
over here. It's a
Right.
major advertising, billboard, marketing, HVAC company that has been in the market for a long time, has trucks and everything, with it. So, good sized company. Yeah.
Have she tried to see if they were going to make this good? I mean, has she called the company, and they came back, and then
Right.
have they decided?
I'll come back, and actually Tom has asked that same question. What do they say? Well, let me get it up to there. They say that everything is fine with the house, that there is nothing essentially wrong with it. Maybe some thermostat issues needed to be changed and all. And if there was some problem in the encapsulation, they didn't use the right seaming glue, this wasn't known, well, that there was some shoddy work, but it wasn't ours, and therefore,
Oh, they didn't do the encapsulation also?
they have a variety of subcontractors that they would actually oversee,
Oh.
but would do the work. But so we didn't do that. But if we stand behind our work is their response to this. Okay, we stand behind our work, and we live in an environment where moisture and things happen. So we stand behind our work. So they deny, in terms of the official legal position of A1, that their work in any way, shape, or form led to the moisture invasion problem that has occurred in the house.
And what's their explanation of how the moisture occurred then?
Right? They
What's their explanation? Like, I would have 3 or so other experts come
Right.
in and evaluate it.
okay.
Evaluate the damage.
Okay.
And they obviously owe her for her health, her move-out costs, her repairs.
Okay.
They owe her for all of that.
Okay.
And to, put a new
Right.
system in.
So their official position on this is, if there was some bad work done, it was done by an individual. It was not sanctioned by the company, or it was a mistake by, that we stand behind what we did and put in, and it was put in correctly and all. And there may have been some adjustments that needed in terms of, as the air changed and things like this with it, but that we stand behind our design with it. Okay? So that's the official position. You would hear that from their representative in court with it. Okay? So how do
Basically,
we,
they're denying any responsibility.
essentially, yeah, essentially from a stand-up in court situation is, we're sorry, but what we did and what we decided and what we put in there was, from our perspective, appropriate.
So they're saying they're not standing behind their subcontractors.
They're saying there's some bad work, we don't know about it. So, if somebody did something wrong, they did it wrong as a workman for what they did, and it's not our issue.
Yeah, but there's also the difference between responsibility and accountability.
Okay?
Because an individual that does something is responsible for that act.
Right?
But somebody's accountable.
Okay?
And they were overseeing this project, and if
Right.
a subcontractor, they did something,
Yeah.
used a kind of glue they weren't supposed to, or
Right.
something, they're ultimately accountable. Now, they can go off on the other end and go after the other company themselves.
Yeah.
But they're accountable. They're the
Right.
ones that the contract was signed with.
Right.
Okay.
And if
They're
somebody else
getting
did
paid,
bad work,
so,
too bad.
yeah.
Okay.
And what year was this?
She buys the house in 2018. So the problems began occurring about 2019, because kind of
Before the pandemic, I thought maybe it was
Right.
the pandemic. Because I know supplies has been on.
right. Not an issue. They were able to get it done on time and were there. And they had come back to the house a number of times in order to deal with it. And they become aware of the moisture issues because of the damage within the house with it. So they are aware of this.
Did they offer her any suggestions of how to fix this, or they just denied anything. about
Yeah,
that.
said, you know,
Yeah.
the house is construction.
The house is over 10 years old.
Right,
Hasn't had a problem until they came in,
correct,
but now it's the construction of the house that was the
right?
problem.
Could be the construction of the house. Just can't quite handle the new,
The new unit.
right. So the bottom line is, we did nothing in terms of our servicing of this equipment or our installation of the equipment to create this problem with it.
Well, I have a problem with that, with them saying that they're an expert in the HVAC system.
Yeah,
They should know how or what they needed to make that house.
right.
Yeah, and if they've been in business
Yeah.
all those years, and nobody inspected work when it's done,
Right.
I mean, they would
Well,
have
they
had
did,
to
yeah.
have an inspector
Yeah.
after it was completed.
Right.
To I mean, I don't
That's
know.
pretty major. You'd think the building inspector would have to look,
Yeah, I
because
mean,
that's a major thing to put
it would
in.
have to be something.
Let
Plus
me-
for the fact that, I mean,
Yeah.
how much money is it being invested in this? You
Probably
would think that they would be,
30, 40,000.
Yeah, over 100.
Oh,
I
wow.
was guessing
Yeah.
100.
That's gonna say
Yeah,
100.
over 100, you know, into that
They had to
system.
put 12 units in, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a dehumidifier in the house and a lot of things to kick in and suck out and take, you know, and deal with it,
Probably.
adjust to the house. An important concept.
I mean, the problem is that a lot of the new technology too, I mean, people are just learning the new stuff.
Right.
You know, years ago, no one thought to put a dehumidifier in the crawl space to,
Right.
you know, or to pump air into the attic. I mean, that's all new stuff.
Okay.
So, I mean, but, you know, they're experts and they've gone in the field and, you know, been, obviously, I'm sure they have.
So
some
Mary's
information.
expert says, you know what? Putting cold air in an attic never happens.
Right,
Why they put a
yeah,
a
creative.
vent into the attic in order to air conditioning an attic which is never used does
Right.
not make
Wrong,
any
yeah.
sense at all. And as you look at the size of the units that are put in, it looks like they never calculated exactly what was necessary in terms of the size and the power and the drive of the units.
So she did hire an outside.
Yes.
Okay, that was.
There is an important calculation in terms of when you're building a house or if someone comes to replace your stuff, and it's actually a rather complicated calculation called the Manual J. And it goes room by room, how many people are in the house, what's the zone or temperature of the region and area, and it gives you a calculation, a mathematical calculation of what is needed in order to heat and cool according to standard. And her expert says that was never done. It looks like it was never done, and that what was put in was either both too much in some instances and not enough in other instances. So that it was a 6,000 square foot house. That's a lot of that's a lot of room to. A kitchen is different in terms of its score than a bathroom. A bedroom is different than the playroom. You know, so a utility room is different than the hallway. So all those things have to be taken into consideration in terms of moving air in and out. Houses sit as like a box surrounded by air pressure, trying to get in and trying to get out. So there's this dynamic flow of air in and around and through a house, and if it gets captured or is not vented properly, this is what happens. That the moisture in the air is not removed and it just goes and gets absorbed. Things. And as he said, there's a rain cloud in the closet, in the in the attic, and you can feel it, and she does, with it. And the dehumidifier underneath the house never worked, never cycled in. It was never wired in properly. So in a very short period of time,
They ruined her house.
a house that was worth $3.4 million becomes uninhabitable because of it. And that the cost calculations,
I was gonna say, what was the damage?
for fixing it begin to take in a whole lot of different issues. Not only replacing what's there, but also dealing with the moisture, the molding, the floors, and everything else, and her personal effects. Okay.
Can't be replaced.
So that's one set of damages that she's claiming, which is add them. You can add those things up. We know what a couch costs. We know what a painting costs. We know what it costs for her to rent another house, while this one, you couldn't live in this one. What it's going to take to strip the sheetrock out of it and fix it. What it's going to take to fix all of these things with it. So those are things you can count, right? You can figure out what those are. And that's where, here's where your challenge is. In the court, you got things you can count in terms of damages, right? You can figure those out. Did you lose any income? Did you, right? How much to replace the steps? You know, all those things, right? Okay, things you can count those things. An expert can come in and say, here it all is. But the law allows a jury to consider other types of damages. And those may be things you can't count, right? Which may have to do with feelings. It may have to do with inconvenience. It may have to do, it's a classic line, pain and suffering, but of the inconvenience of what occurs here, the stress that happens, all of the things that go with moving in a house and then moving out of a house and then being uncertain about, you know, what's going to happen to the house and those types of things. So that's one. So the things you can count, right? So it's plus and minus things. And then there's, I don't know, what do you want to call these things you can't count?
Punitive.
Not punitive. Well, that's a separate one. Okay.
Intangible.
But they involve her, things she's lost. The law says you can consider what the individual, to what degree they have been inconvenienced, changed. That's a form of harm. You know.
If one of her paintings that she very cherished was given to her by somebody
Right.
who's passed away,
Right.
there could be an emotional attachment there that's been damaged.
Oh, good. Okay, emotional. We'll do this emotional. Okay. Emotional. How about well-being along with it? Okay. So that's a category. That's those. I mean, they're tangible because we feel them, but they're not necessarily things that you can add up on a ledger. And then there's a specific one dealing with health. Okay. And as she said, she'd had a reaction and had gone to a doctor, and they had kind of said, yeah, well, you've got this problem with mold. You can't, you know, and it's settled in your chest, and you're going to have to deal with it. And so there's this health side of it, which is kind of another. All right. Okay. So the things we can count. Make sure we're on time. Good. Are how much it takes to replace this, right? The value of the paintings, you know, how much it costs to store everything, how much it costs to rent another house with it, how much it's going to take to pull out the sheet, all of those costs. So when you think, without going through a long list of them, well, just things we can count, and everybody would say, yes, you can count that. That's, you know, there's not a lot of, maybe you can get a little bit cheaper, or maybe you can, but for our purposes, it is those things about repair and fixing and having to move and live and all those things, you know, $1.2 million. All right.
And this is what they're asking.
That's what they've added up.
They've added up.
So they would say, if you think that A1 is responsible for this, then we're going to say, as a result, Mary deserves the damages which they've caused. And we say the damages are these things, the things we can count, and those things count up to over $1 million, right? And that's just fixing stuff. That's just these things. That's getting clean, the paintings, things, all of that aspect of it, replacing the couch, things that have been ruined, right? That aspect of it, okay? So The next is the emotions of it. Where do you start? This is the hard part of juries, right here. How do you start? How do you figure that out in terms of the emotional situation here? Now, you know very little about this, and for a reason. I'm just curious how you approach that calculus, because this is what juries have to figure out. Is, okay, what's there?
What did she do before this? You know, was she active and now she's not active? Or?
Well, we'll say yes. I mean, she's an avid collector.
Yeah.
You know, again, she was over a divorce. You know, was kind of moving out, new life, that type of thing, trying to figure out, you know, who she is at this point. You know, that's kind of where she is at this time. Age 66 years old. You know, trying to figure it out. But it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Lives a comfortable life. She does not work. Lives a comfortable life, and has had a life of, you know, advantage. We'll put it that way to it. So, Courtney, what would you put on the list?
Emotional, how much the damage for emotional?
Yeah, I mean, how do we figure this out? I guess is the beginning question. Where do we go? Well, let's start with the basic question. Does she deserve damages beyond what you can count?
Yes, because
Yes.
she had the house inspected before she bought it.
Right.
And everything was, air conditioning and something was fine.
Right? I mean,
Because before you buy a house, you gotta get the house inspected.
Right.
So,
right.
especially her price point for 3.5 million or whatever, she wants a perfect house.
Right.
You know, move-in ready, so she doesn't have to do any work for the next couple years.
Okay. All right. So the emotional, Denise, you said yes. The emotional.
Yes. I would think that in order to be able to determine that, I'd want to have an idea of what her life was like before
Okay.
and what her life was like during this process.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we'll roll back to that. That's
Okay.
a good bracket to think about. Sue, is the emotional?
That's what I
Yeah.
came up with that too. Because,
Okay.
you know, what is her, I mean, she has to move to a new house.
She rented a house.
Her inconvenience just for
Right.
that, to do that again, I mean, that's emotional right there. Really,
Right.
do you know how emotional that gets? How long does she have to stay in the house? How long does she have to rent the house?
Still
You
there.
know, yeah, she's still there.
Yeah.
How
So,
long was this process?
The exiting from the house takes place after about 6 or 7 months of what we're saying, and then it's been there for over a year.
Okay.
Okay.
So
With it.
it's a year and it's still not.
Right. Well, yeah, trying to get it all fixed, trying to decide what to do with it, lots of issues with it, paying for it, the whole thing.
and
So,
that's her well-being right there. I mean,
Right.
Is it anywhere near being completed or no?
we'll say for the purposes of this, we'll say it's close to being that. But there's still a lot of work left to be done. Paintings are off being done, you know, all these things. Hadn't gone and bought new furniture because, you know, things like that. So, you know,
Is the company paying for this, the A1 HVAC?
no, she's
this,
paying for this.
right.
Right.
Which, you know,
I mean,
luckily she had the money, but if you didn't have the money, yeah, that would have
Right, right,
still emotional.
right,
That's a big price tag.
right. So the emotion, Michelle?
I mean, I understand emotional and well-being, but I also understand that there are people that take it to extremes.
Okay,
And I mean, like I said, I mean, there's, in my, you know, she's had a very good life. She's been well off. She can afford this home. She's got these priceless antiques.
right,
Obviously, you know, she's never had to go without.
Right.
I'm assuming. But then you've got the little guy who is probably, there's another little guy out there who's having a similar situation.
Right.
And how, you know, it's like, you got to balance that,
Sure.
in my opinion, because, you know, just because you got money doesn't mean that, you know, you should be given this an extraordinary amount.
right.
Because, you know, the little guy,
What,
he should be
yeah,
equal to.
no, good point, is what's the,
Yeah, like.
How do you calculate the value of it?
Right.
Pardon?
Yeah.
How do you
Put a price
calculate
on
the?
someone's emotion.
And it
But you
should.
have, I mean, obviously in the court, they're gonna want you to put a price on it, but you gotta.
You
I
have
think
to.
You have to.
You're required
You
to.
have to look at everything out there,
Right.
not just the situation, but looking at the whole, the whole big picture of everybody.
All right, let me give you a little legal instruction on damages. Is that the charge to the jury is you have to look at her as she is and consider all the possible range of damages to her, That the evaluation of this is about her. And the things we can, it is her house, it's not someone else's house, it is her, it's not someone else's. Her emotional distress or pain is hers. And although we may all, is how you look at that in terms of the human cost of it, or damages is a tough concept, in the court when you get into this. That's why we're here, is to wrestle with it. So Michelle brings up some important kind of, I guess, guardrails to it. Is where's, what's the brackets, in this thing. But that's what you've got to decide. That's your job. And you have to decide it based on her.
Right.
Because what's in front of you is not anyone else, it's her.
Right. It's the changes to her life
Right?
that occurred, the duration of time that
Okay.
that she had to endure them,
Right?
and the extent to which they caused her to not function.
Okay.
Those are the three things that I think you have to consider in order to be able to come up with any amount for damages.
Okay.
But I think you have to
Somebody-
rein them in, just as you said,
Well,
based on
somebody-
the fact that what is average, not what is exceptional.
Okay.
Well, with that, I know we're looking at her and what she has endured and everything. But, I still go back to, and I know we're not supposed to, but at the same time, the little guy.
No,
maybe-
it's allowed. That's the great thing about this. We
The
can say
little
what's on our
guy
mind.
may be
Yeah.
sleeping in his car because
Right.
he can't afford to rent the
Right.
place.
Okay.
Because he doesn't have the money to cover, so I mean, her damages, she's,
Just,
there's gotta be a limit to it, and it's gotta be a reasonable,
Okay.
and it can't be, well, this is how I lived, and this is how I expect to be, reimbursed, entitled.
But the law says to be
Not
made whole. To be made whole, to be put back as you were.
Yeah.
Right.
But
So
it's just, but to be put back as you were, getting your house fixed, now getting
Yeah.
back to there. I mean, that in itself is putting you back.
Right.
Okay, then you have to add the emotional well-being.
Okay.
There is some money involved in there, but in my opinion, it should not be an extraordinary
okay.
amount.
All right. Good. We'll keep going. Tom.
I've been thinking about a number of things. Backtracking maybe, I would have been interested to have heard about what she did to mitigate the problem during this event. Because part of it is, if your house is starting to burn down because somebody didn't install something right,
Right.
you don't complain to them and sit there and not call the fire department. And in this case, if she's having some kind of problem and it's pointed out, she'd go to them and say, listen, I got a major problem.
Right.
I'm gonna start doing contract work.
Which she does do.
I
And
just
then
wondered
what she
if she
initially
did
does is she
several
brings it to their
times.
attention.
Did you bring dehumidifiers into the house?
No one said that that's what she needed to do. They said that.
But if you've got water coming out of your vents, then it's
All
reasonable
right,
to
let
believe
me
that you should.
go back to the
Yeah.
argument is 66-year-old who.
I'm 69 years old.
No, I know, but who was there and who
I'm there by
calls the
myself.
company that puts it in, they say it's okay, that there needs to be some changes in the thermostat, there needs to be, we went to vinyl, whatever. They never diagnosed the specific problem, but told her that it was all right until she was encouraged by a contracted workman to go find another source and have this looked at, which she did do. So all that takes place in about 6 months with it. So in terms of being reactive, reacting to it, she did. But it wasn't until someone says, wait a minute,
somebody else.
This ain't right. This is not right. You know,
So is she asking for 1.2 million?
that's the things, well, yeah, the damages, I mean, essentially if you say, well, they're responsible for the work and the pain, suffering, and damages to the house and what's caused to her, then you have to say, okay, well, what are the damages that are going to be awarded here? And you would hear testimony about, okay, this is what it costs to do this, and this. And this is what it costs for her to move out. This is what it costs. So those things, like you say. But the judges say you can consider the emotional stress, you know, the time. You can consider all these other things, and you can consider her health as well.
Does she
So-
have an idea what she thinks that she deserves for that, for her health and her emotional stress?
Indeed, but I'm curious about where you are,
I would,
you know,
hard to-
first.
I
with
would
it.
think about taking a percentage of the damages.
Yeah,
Right.
I was gonna say the same exact thing.
What do you
Yeah.
mean? Explain that.
10% of the actual damages should be
That
awarded
the
as
actual
emotional.
damage that she had to endure is related to her emotional distress, or should be related to her emotional distress. If you had a $10 ding on your car,
Right.
it would be much less emotional distress than if you had $1 million worth of damage to your house.
Okay.
But there should be some relationship between them that should be constant.
Right.
Right. And that would be some kind of ratio or a percentage.
I was kind of starting at whatever the actual damages were and then calculate from there.
Things depreciate too over time.
All right. That's an interesting calculation. So does anyone disagree with this, or do you like that?
I think everybody can, because I could say, well, just equal the actual damages, right? That's an easy number to come up with.
Right.
You can justify it. Well, that's the actual damages. We'll give her that for the emotional
Things
damages.
depreciate too.
Yeah, I don't know that I would give her that whole amount for emotional damages, though.
But her health, what about the health?
Well, we haven't
Right.
gotten to that yet.
Is that,
Right.
is that going to
Okay.
be extra?
All right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll put Denise's calculation on the board. So explain it again. What are you proposing?
What I'm proposing is that your emotional distress would be related to your actual expense, actual damages,
Right.
in such a way that it would be a proportion of the actual damages.
Okay. So if she's got to spend $1.2 million to get it physically right.
Right. Then
Right, all
maybe we
with
could
it.
say that her emotional distress is worth 30%
Okay.
or some percentage of
Yeah,
that.
I was thinking that's.
Yeah, I think just the consensus is that we're going to use that number of actual damages and then make an assessment. But I think we need more information as well.
For some reason, 30% came to my mind too, I don't know why.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that
I think if we had more information about her life before and her life after, or during and after, that would be what we would use to determine the percentage.
Okay. What specifically would you be interested in
See-
knowing?
Oh, does she have a heart
But the
attack? Does she
problem-
No.
pass out?
Have good health.
Panic attacks?
Yeah, for the purpose of this, good
Were there
health.
things that she did in the past that she's not able to do now
But she's
because of the
going-
emotional distress?
Well,
But there's
And-
the
and-
exaggeration.
That- I mean, I would wanna
yeah,
know
no,
that.
well stated, well stated. Good question. Let me, for the purposes of this, let me provide an answer. No. Okay, that in terms of her life, it has stalled out because what she was about was having a very nice home, fine home, moving to it, starting a new life, and having a place where she could display all the things she loved and wanted. That, according to how her life changed, her was taken away and has to now be rebuilt. So the emotional thing is not only the loss of that, right? Of being through the frustration of having, somebody said the car wreck, right? Of seeing your beautiful, lovely car, whatever, destroyed, and the house was important to her with it. So as to have to then pay for trying to resolve it and bring it back. So it's kind of a classic story of loss and then having to redo with it, and then the emotions that go with the loss, and then have you ever had to do that? You know, all of a sudden take back on a project and have to rebuild or whatever with it. so that that emotional investment of trying to bring herself whole with it, you know.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did she have the money to be able to start doing the repairs? Or is she just sitting and letting it sit?
Put it this way, no.
Okay.
No, because the price tag was so high
Okay.
with it. And remember this, she's paying the mortgage on the existing home as well as
Okay.
rent on a
Okay.
equally sized home.
Okay.
So now that's in the
So that would
rent
be
and
more
all
emotional
that.
distress,
Right.
in my opinion. If she didn't have the money to be able to
Right.
work on that, that would cause more emotional distress.
Well, let's
So
put
I
it, her
want my number
testimony
to
would be,
higher.
this whole thing put me in significant financial, behind a rock and a hard place. I'm committed, I'm the mortgage, you know, all these things, these is it. But all of a sudden, I'm having to do twice, you know what, as well as keep up. So the emotional stress is in trying to figure out how to exist and get this back.
I think there'd be a calculation in there for how much she had to spend out of pocket.
Okay?
All right, she didn't have use of her house yet, had to pay on it.
She should
So
get
there could be a calculation in that.
It's part of that 1.2.
Okay, is that all
Right.
part of that
Part of the
1.2 million?
Is that-
Basically, the rent charges and those things, and, right, yeah.
Anything that you could actually put a price to.
Yeah, when you talk to emotional though, I mean, where is the price? Because the money is not gonna fix anything. I mean, we all sit here and say, oh, you know, I wanna sue, I get millions of dollars, oh, we're all happy.
Right,
And I think I'm not gonna sit there and deny anybody of that.
okay. Well,
Right?
yeah,
But again, you know, it's like, what are the actual, what really happened?
right, okay. Well,
And it's gotta be limited, it can't be unlimited.
right. All right, the court says these are,
Yeah.
and the judge would say, these are legitimate. You can explore them and talk about them and figure it out. Denise has had a perspective on it. There's been, Lori has said, yeah, that's interesting, and, you know, with it. So that's how these things get worked out. Let's move to health, and I'm gonna come back and give you a number with it. Okay, all right, and then react to it. So the health side is something different, and that's more of a future thing. She knows and has been diagnosed and told that she's reactive to the mold. So there's some compromise going on in her system, and how that plays out is uncertain, is uncertain. But that is there. That wasn't there prior to this.
Which adds to the emotional
Right,
well-being.
which was, so that development in terms of her reaction and health at this point was not there, but it's tied to that with it. Okay, so that's a future looking forward with it. And it's also a change. The law says, well, that she's not like she was
Before.
right before. So therefore, this is a change. What's the price, the damage price of that change? So the health consequences, which are diagnosed and documented with it,
But the health isn't a definite, it's a possible.
right? It is.
So, I mean, that's something also you need to consider.
Correct. Correct.
Aren't there experts that can do projections
But
of
then
what
you
it
have
might
another
be based
expert
on
that says
what
the
her,
opposite.
her diagnosis is?
Right. It could be. Sure.
Okay.
Could
But then
be.
you could always, the other side's gonna get an expert that will contradict
say
that
something
expert.
else.
So,
Right.
I mean, this is possible health issues, and, I mean, every one of us, we walk outside and we have possible health issues
Yeah.
from
Does she,
doing
does she have a
something.
diagnosis?
I
Yeah.
know we're looking.
Yeah.
at
No,
it.
there's diagnosed that she has a reactive respiratory,
that she didn't have
ailment that's
before?
triggered by
company
the
did this.
mold
Is it-
that was in the house.
is it
This
better
very
now that she's
specific
out of it?
mold. Yeah. Yeah. But it's there. It's there. That's her.
So does this just affect her as normal if she was exposed to it? Or is there something?
The diagnosis is how that plays out with you will determine, is part of your future.
I mean, I've got asthma, I take
Yeah,
some
right,
every day.
right.
I got a reliever.
Okay.
I'm well managed.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, if I was reacting to something,
Yeah.
it would diminish my lifestyle or whatever.
Right.
And they determine it's permanent.
Yeah.
Now there's a change, as you say.
Correct.
So the great question is, okay, we knew she had this, but has it affected her to such a degree now that she's on additional medications or treatments?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. The answer to that is yes.
So then we.
And she has those whether she's in that house or not.
Right, it's something that's part of her physical
Because
her health makeup at this point.
Okay.
She definitely should get some type of damage for that.
Wait, say that again louder.
Is that a separate?
Yeah. Say,
Yeah, she definitely should get compensated for that because she probably was living an active life, and now
Yeah.
if she travels, she might need an oxygen tank. She might need equipment when she travel. I have heart disease. So sometime if I'm traveling, I gotta make sure I have everything. I
yeah,
need
long
before
term,
I go.
right, okay. All
Which
right,
she didn't have to have before they had this issue.
okay, all right.
This is brought on
Right.
just
All
by.
right, we got a few
the
minutes
house.
here. Okay, y'all
Yeah.
dug into it, so I've actually let y'all go with it because you brought up a whole lot of interesting angles in terms of looking at this for it. Okay, well, we know we've got 1.2 million. That, again, things we can count, and I don't think there's any controversy about that among you. If there is, go ahead. And that it is literally the cost of repair, the cost of that, all those things. Okay, okay. The emotional. This would be how the ask works. Okay, essentially all these things are interconnected. This creates this, which creates that, which creates that, and back up the road with it. You don't get this without this, right? You don't get this without this. This makes this worse.
Right.
So it's cumulative with it. And actually, if you take it and just make it all one and assign a third to everything, beginning with the cost, you end up with 3.6.
Okay.
3.6.
That would be the asking.
I'd have a hard time.
And that's
with
what
that.
they're asking for?
I'm saying that this would be part of the presentation that you would hear.
I'd have a hard time.
Is that although you can separate these, they're all cumulative. This is all part of it. And that since this is concrete, you can almost say that's the creation of this because that expenditure was not there,
Before.
right?
Yeah.
That health issue was not there. So that the things that we can count really kind of carry over into the things that we have a heart we can think about. So the simplest and best way to look at this is the future, the emotional, all of it is tied together with the things that we can count. Make them each a third. It's 3 million plus.
For a company that,
Is this a national company or a small company?
no,
Well, you would hear testimony about his revenues and values, and you would, for this purposes, it would be a successful, kind of large company. Okay, think of it in those terms.
I think because of her health and her emotional, I would give her more.
Okay,
That's just me.
I'd give her less.
you give her less.
Yeah,
Go ahead
I-
and make
I
the.
give
I
her
don't-
less also.
I
Yes.
don't believe that she
I mean,
should
if
get
that's the-
$1.2 million for emotional well-being.
Right.
Okay.
I don't believe that even having to leave her house and live in another house that is okay.
She's getting $2.4
She's-
million for her health and emotional well-being. Just living life, like we should all get that.
Okay.
And I mean,
Yeah,
get in a car accident, no one pays me for my.
Okay.
I would want
stress,
two
you know.
things. I would want less money for the emotional well-being, and I'd want more information about her health and its possible ramifications in
Okay.
the future. Because from what you're telling me, I would give her nowhere near $1.2 million
Because right,
for
when you move out
future
of
health
Okay.
that hasn't been
May
spelled
not.
out
You
what
should
her
get
problems
better.
are.
That
Okay.
may or may not occur.
That may or
Right.
may not occur.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be nowhere
Tom?
near that.
As we talk about it, I was thinking about, 600,000 for each of those.
Yeah, it was like 2 million max.
2 million
So you
max.
get
Okay.
one.
plus the 1.2, that's already.
No,
2
2 million
for-
max.
For all of it.
Yeah, I'd probably be closer
So you would add
to-
$800,000 to it.
Plus,
Okay.
I
Which
would
is,
do
you
more.
know. when she
Courtney,
moved out-
you said more,
Yeah,
right?
because you know what? I bought my house by myself before I got married. I built that house from the ground up. That is the best feeling ever. I bought a house without a man. First one in my family.
Right.
So you know what? To leave my house, I would be devastated because my little girl, she's 4. I'm 50 with a 4-year-old. That's the only house my little girl know.
Okay.
So
So a lot of emotion in that.
emotion
That's
attached.
what's going on.
Even though she
Okay.
was there like 6 months to a year, still she bought the house after the
Okay.
divorce. It's
All right, let me,
trying to come back
just
to
as we
try.
tie this up here,
I
we're
did
gonna
this
tie this
without
up.
you.
Okay.
I
go
would
for
go
it.
3.6.
Pardon me?
I would go with 3.6.
You would go
I think that's
3.6.
fair. I think that's fair. Since because of the health is such an unknown,
Okay,
and it changed her life. It's going to change her life, no matter what. It changed her life.
okay. Okay,
I would probably go with 1.8 total.
1.8, okay.
I would do 3 million. Plus they would have to pay the lawyer fees. That should not come out of her money.
Okay.
2 million.
2,
I'm gonna go 2.4.
I would be closer to the 1.8.
you're close to 1.8?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This is how it happens.
Yeah.
This is exactly how people figure these things out in a discussion around the table about this. And granted, you're a little, you know, you're disadvantaged because of the information, but so I'm looking more, but I was looking for just how you would parse this out based on it. You didn't see you didn't hear her, you didn't hear them, you get the kind of the
Right.
factual
Right.
of it and the conceptual idea of what this is. But you were all in agreement in terms of, and we'll say that that was presented very fairly about what happened to the house and what the company said and what they did not do and all, and what the expert says. That's the fair part. There's no change in that. That's what occurred in
No,
this,
they're
in this
liable.
scenario.
There's a question of how much, but they
Right,
are liable
right.
with what we've
Okay.
heard.
And nobody questioned that.
I
It-
have a question.
Sure.
What, that J
Yeah,
calculation?
right.
What does the company say? I mean, how do they just?
They have no explanation for that.
So they can't explain how they.
There is no document that says, here it is.
Okay,
Okay.
well, then I understand that. 'Cause I was just curious, because, I mean, if they went through the calculation.
No. It was not produced. Okay.
Okay, well, then that solves that with the company,
Okay.
with me.
All right. Thank you. Y'all stayed a little bit longer and I appreciate it. We can do it again. You want to do it again? Go ahead, Tom.
2.37 million.
2.37, that's yours? Where were you at
She was
2?
2.4.
You were
This is an
2.4?
additional one.
Pardon me?
This is an additional one.
What do you mean an additional one?
Well, that's the average of everybody.
Oh, okay, got it. Got it. Well, all right, real quick. Someone mentioned it early on about punitive damages. Now, punitive damages are a whole separate discussion, and basically it is what it sounds like. It's a decision by a jury that says, look, the defendant was reckless in what they did and irresponsible in what they did, and therefore should be assessed a different penalty for it, punitive with it. There's no guidelines on that. Right, so that you can look at it, is this one of those situations just based on what you know about what they said about what they did and did not do with it, where punitive would be something that should be discussed?
I think,
If this was agreed upon and they were found at fault,
Right,
I would just,
well, you just did,
yeah,
okay.
then I would say punitive.
You said punitive is something that,
Yeah.
I'd say punitive is part of that number.
okay, it can't, well,
No,
according to
no,
law,
yeah.
you have to deal with it separately. So
Okay,
you would
I'm
have
just
to, as a group, first say, yes, punitive is a damage award that we want to discuss. They were reckless in terms of what they did, and that's not a reasonable response to what was done, and it put her in harm's way with
But
it.
in my opinion, as far as punishing the company, okay, I mean, as far as her, we have now made her whole at whatever we
Right.
agreed with. And the punishing the company for more money for her, that's where I,
It's
Okay.
punishing their insurance company, probably.
Yeah, it's an insurance company.
You wouldn't hear about
but
You would hear
testimony of
about
an
insurance.
insurance company, you can assume what you'd like. But a punitive damage, yes, it does go to the plaintiff, but its purpose is different than to make whole.
They did the shot.
Its purpose is is
You
a
don't want them to be at your
finding by the
house,
jury
right?
against the defendant based on their actions.
I think there were two things that they did that were reckless.
Okay,
One is the manual J calculation not being done and not being documented.
right,
And I think the other is that they didn't oversee their subcontractors.
okay.
I think both of those are reckless and that they would be entitled to
And a-
punitive damages because of that.
Okay.
And a third, they did not, when they got called back several times, they did not
Yeah.
correct the problem,
Okay,
even though they knew that it was a problem.
They just,
It's hard to, like, we need to know more, you know? Like, how many jobs have they done like this? Have they ever been?
it's not something you do. You have to, in the court, you deal with this one instance, not a pattern or anything like that. Occasionally it is, but for this purpose, it's just this one. You have to look at, assess what they did on this one. So punitive or not?
Very lowish.
Okay,
If you're gonna-
raise your hand, that'll be good. The camera will capture it. Yes, yes.
Because I don't want to come to my house.
Lori?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes? Okay, so everybody, Michelle's kind of gone.
I'm sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. No,
Punitive damages, I mean, I understand punishing the company, but punitive damages has also what's ruined our company that people can't afford things.
Understand it.
as
Okay,
far as
I understand that
insurance and
position.
stuff.
Sure.
Yes,
Not
So
a problem.
If you,
yeah, that's what I think.
if you
too.
call for punitive damages.
All right, real quick, and just tell me, would you assess punitives in excess of $1 million?
yes.
No.
No,
No.
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 I would do the cost of the job,
Cost of the job.
cost of the job.
Times two,
Okay,
maybe.
cost of the job.
Oh, you're saying
Okay,
times two?
If it was $100,000 to cost the job, 200
Okay.
punitive damage.
okay.
I don't want to wreck the company to the ground where they
Yeah.
can't come back, but I also want to say, you can't do this. It's
Can you
not
make a
acceptable. I don't want you in my house
They have
next.
to pay.
It's just straight to the individual.
Yeah, you don't even know where that comes from. You just have to decide as a matter of law that it's warranted here. There's no testimony about where that comes from.
Punitive would be what, like you said, the cost of the job.
Okay.
or plus.
The thing I see though is, for the punitive, is they were out there, they saw there was a problem, it's not going away, and they refused to look any deeper.
That's what I said, that's number
Okay.
3.
Right, and at that point, they're,
Negligent.
I mean,
They're
that's,
reckless.
I'm obviously, my business is a whole lot different than their business.
Yeah, right.
But my policy, if you take a sip of your drink, oh, it's no good, I say, fine, throw it in the garbage, I'll make you another one.
Right.
You know,
Right.
But what
make
if
sure
I
it's right.
spilled my coffee on my lap and I burned myself and I believe that I now,
I've heard that one before.
Yeah,
I
someone's
need to
doing that
punish you
Yeah, McDonald's.
Okay.
because your coffee was too hot?
Yeah.
Do you
The
want my
McDonald's.
business answer or the real answer?
What?
Either one, I mean, that's,
Hold your coffee.
Yeah.
okay,
It's a hot product.
exactly, exactly.
But have you ever
But-
seen her leg?
What?
Yeah, that we won't go to the
That's all.
McDonald's case. I mean,
But I'm just
that's
saying,
a rather
like,
famous
yeah.
case. All right, y'all are great. Thank you, thank you for doing it. Look, all right, one thing
Are
that
you
you know.
the attorney for this?
No,
person?
no,
Oh.
I'm not an attorney. No, no,
Oh, you're not?
no, no.
He's bored.
Market research is what we do.
Oh, I thought you were the attorney.
Yeah, we study decision making, all this kind of, but this is kind of a simulation about how you go about processing it. All right, you're going to get a gift electronic card from me, okay?
Okay.
But it's going to come by way of a company. Its name is Tremendous, okay, which is out of California. We pay them; they send it in a secure manner. So that's why we do it this way.
Sounds good.
It will be processed probably around 11:30 tonight, and then it's going to show up in your email. Now,
Great.
occasionally a dot or a M or a com gets dropped somewhere in the process, and so if you don't see it tomorrow morning, you let me know, and then we'll go back into the registry to make sure. It's one in an occasional goof, but if it does, we want to know about it.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
directly,
This is great.
and we'll get it taken care of immediately with it, and spend it because they're betting you're not.
Okay.
Right, because they sweep those accounts on those cards after a year or whatever, and then
Okay.
they buy a home in France or something like that. So
Want those for the trip home?
you are a darling.
Thanks.
You are
I
a
got two
darling.
more.
Thank you very
Anybody
much
else?
for the hard work.
Want
I
a cookie?
appreciate it. Guys, we're good on everything? Okay. We met coming in. I'm Kerry, Crantford, Columbia's home for us. This is what we do for a living. Get people in the room and ask them questions, usually, but we always have a purpose. And the purpose tonight is to see how people react to a rather complex but real world everyday experience that if you were in a jury you would have to contend with. Okay. So rather than give you, and I think I mentioned in the initial emails to you that we're going to talk as a mock jury, that's a term in the research business, and in a way we are. You're the deciders. You're going to make decisions about this, and I'm going to be the provider of information. So I'm going to play all roles to the extent that there are. I'll talk about the plaintiff and the defendant and this and that, and I'll give you a little bit of a law as well as structure for what you're doing. But ultimately, at the end, you have to make some decisions. There's two levels of decisions. One, in a civil trial, it's always about the plaintiff saying that they were hurt, something that was happened by the defendant, caused by the defendant, caused them pain, suffering, hurt, loss of something, right? Something has always been lost. Could be your life, right? Could be damage to property, and that is one of the ones we're going to talk about tonight. Could be a lot of different things, but it's the plaintiff who brings the suit saying that the defendant is responsible for their loss with it. The first step by a jury is to decide, is that true? Is the plaintiff's claim correct? Is the defendant responsible? If so, then number two comes up, which is, well, what does that mean? Damages, right? The court only says that allows a jury to speak in the language of damages, and the only value of damages is money. That's the only way you can do it. You can't write a book, you can't, criminal is something else. So you have to come to a decision if you decide that the defendant is responsible in terms of what is the value of what the plaintiff says they lost, and how will that be assessed in terms of the different categories of damages that the court allows you to think about, right? And I'll define some of those as we go along. So yes, you are going to be a jury and make the decisions here, the two-step decision here, and we'll see where we get. We stop at one or we go to two. That's up to you with it. There is no set end to this story. There is no particular outcome to this story. It is just a conflict that we're presenting in order to highlight the processes of damages discussion and the whole liability discussion, okay? The two things that a jury does. Now, unlike if you've ever been on a jury, you can't ask questions. They just talk to you, right? Until you get it's all over with and you go in a room and you make some decisions. Well, that's the opposite here. So as I meet out information, you're free to say, what? Wait, what? Can you go, what? Tell me about that. So whatever comes up can come out here. There rarely in this one is there something I can't tell you, sometimes because of evidence or things like that. You can't necessarily go into certain things, but if there is one, I'll flag that for you. But go back and explain that. Let me see that again. Explain it. All fine. Okay. It's hard to do on a real jury, but tonight I want to make sure you've got all the comfort that you need with the information that I'm going to provide you in order to grapple with the decision of both one, liability, and second, on damages. Okay? Simple as that. Use your notes if you want. It's okay. No big deal. Those are microphones. We record this. No. yeah. But it really, what happens is it turns into a transcript. So this is the easiest way to do it. Just send it up to AI and it comes back full of words. So, but it's a record that we keep. So if you turn your names towards the camera, that'll help. And we'll know who's who visually when we go back and look at it. There you go, Gwen. And mine's the only one that gets to go this way. If you can make sure your phones are at least on silent, what happens if, and I've got two things sitting here, which is a problem. If they vibrate or do anything, it becomes a problem in the sound area. So, or drumming fingers or anything like that. Just as a warning for you on that. Okay, all good? Everybody comfortable? I thought I got some coffee. I guess I didn't. Okay, no big deal. All right, Kim, we're going to start with you. We'll introduce ourselves. You know who I am, know where I'm from, how long you lived in the area, type of work you do, not where you work, just type of work you do. And all we need is first names here, so we're not going into deep personal background on anything. So just those 2 questions.
Okay, my name is Kim. I have lived in Somerville for the past 7 years. I've lived in the Charleston area for 14.
Yeah.
I work as a nurse manager for utilization review for a Medicaid
Yeah.
company.
Okay. Thank you for being here for the late show. Appreciate you here. Okay. Arnold, same thing, same 2 questions.
Lived here, born and raised all my life,
Yeah.
and I'm a photographer.
Photographer. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Welcome, Robert.
Robert, I've lived here my whole life. I kind of work for myself. I sell stems for musicians online.
Really?
Little 30-second loops that I do with various instruments and computer software. So
That's cool.
it's been fun.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. All right. Robert, Dave.
I only live 6 minutes from here, so that's nice. I've been here for 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm kind of unemployed, self-employed, disabled.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Right now, I flip stuff from auction.
Property. Yeah.
Not
Okay.
property, but vehicles.
Oh yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Equipment I get at auctions.
Cool. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Good. Thanks for being here, Gwen.
My name is Gwen, and I am from Somerville, and I've lived here all my life. I'm an administrative assistant for Goodwill.
Oh, okay.
Corporate office.
One of my very strongly supported groups. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like Goodwill a lot. Mike.
My name's Mike. I live in Hanahan, so right down the street.
Yeah.
I've been in this area for 23 years and I'm a realtor.
All right. Jill.
Monk's Corner, 7.5 years, originally Philadelphia area. And I am a platform owner and IT liaison between the business and the developers.
That's a lot to get on a business card there.
Platform owner.
Okay. All right. Welcome all. Okay. Let me start you off with the story, the background of the story. Mary Jones. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question? Can
Yep.
I switch with someone because I have a neck injury?
Oh,
And I
yeah.
can't. There's no way I'm looking back.
Kim, you want to, how about there? Will that work for you? Not a problem. Yeah, and by the way, there are no rules here. So, I mean, if you got an emergency call or something like that, step out and take it, whatever like that. No big deal. We'll catch you up when you walk back in. Mary Jones, 66-year-old woman from California. Mary has kind of best way to describe her has really kind of come from a very advantaged life. In other words, her family had money, and she's grown up in that type of environment, educated, divorced at this point, and kind of decides that it's time, new life, let's make a change, and let's look across, America and figure out where we might want to go. South Carolina's always been an attraction, particularly this area, Charleston, right? For like many of us, and for Mary, wow, what a nice place. Visits, decides, I'm going to throw my anchor out here, as I kind of plow through what's next for me. Mary buys a house, $3.5 million house, 6,000 square feet, big house. And she really, really likes to collect things. And one of her favorite things, and actually a passion that she kind of grew up with, and it's part of her family, is art. Antiques and collections of various things, whether it could be glass or crystal, things like that. So Mary buys this house. The house at the time that she buys it is about 10 years old with it. Very, very custom neighborhood, right? And she's very excited about it. She kind of has a boyfriend for a short period of time, but that kind of changes with it. And she moves in to the house kind of in the spring of, say, 2018, okay? Very excited about putting roots down here, seeing what it's like. Doesn't really know anybody with it, but is excited about the prospects of that. Decorates her house according to her whims and interests. Brings her art, has it hung. And the people who have actually visited her, seen her, kind of describe this as a really, really nice museum. That is, there's some very nice things there, and they're very well displayed and well appointed in this house. So let me give you just a little bit of. There she is. That's Mary. So you can see. In Mary's house that she's bought. Okay, 6,000 square feet. You know, it's important to know some characteristics about the house because the lawsuit that's between Mary and an HVAC provider. Okay. So the house is big, many rooms, kitchen, all these things. It has a crawl space under it, right? It's sitting on dirt, as most houses here are. But the crawl space is a satisfactory space where you can get up under it and the whole thing. And again, the house is about 10 years old at the time that she buys it. In reading the inspection reports that come with the buying of a house, right? She notices that kind of catches her attention. She's not sure what to make of it because this is not her experiential platform, but that the heat and air system in the house is, 7 years old, and it's kind of flagged by the inspector prior. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that it probably needs to be updated. Well, she's interested in updating it because she's in a humid environment now with an awful lot of her treasures that she likes, and she knows what that feels like because she's new to the area with it. So she makes a decision to let me go talk to an HVAC company and see what they have to say and have them look at this for them, which she does do. So she selects this company, A1 Heat and Air. Now, A1 Heat and Air is a fairly good sized regional company. Now, they have trucks that run in 24 hours a day. They have an answering service. They are on call 24 hours a day. They hold themselves out as experts in both design and installation of the latest HVAC systems. They have licenses with the major HVAC manufacturers. They have a number of subcontractors for a variety of things that go on with heat and air, including encapsulation. We'll talk about that. In other words, putting plastic down in your. I always thought that was a great word. We're putting plastic down under your house. Encapsulation. They do commercial. They do residential. No job is too small or too big. Is part of how they approach things with it. They have a great reputation locally, and they are really kind of the first or second name on most people's lists when they're, particularly developers, when they're building and building out things. So they've been around with it. They come in and they take a look at the HVAC system that's in Mary's house, and they say, yeah, this needs to be redone. Considering everything that you have and what you want, the size of this house, as well as the technology advancements that have occurred, you would be wise to do this, including, my favorite word, encapsulate the crawl space with it. Put a humidifier in there.
Vapor barriers.
Vapor barriers, seal it all up, with it. It protects a lot of things, as well as to change the size of the HVAC system in general in order to be more efficient, cool faster, and give you more control over that. And ultimately, it will save you some power with it. But it's going to cost. 6,000 square feet, all this, and indeed. They recommend essentially taking everything out and putting 6 new units in order to deal with it. And that's the air handler, the compressor, all of that, reworking the duct work with it, encapsulating the under the house with it, changing the thermostats, making sure the wiring is up and good and fine with it, and with some new efficient dehumidifiers around that operate as a part of the HVA system. Okay. Now, I'm assuming something about HVA systems here. So here's the definition for them. We all may know, but here it is. It's more than one thing. It's a lot of different things that work together, and the ductwork kinds of pulls it all together. And you've all been under your house or been in the attic and seen ductwork wrapped in silver stuff. So what? Ventilation, heating, and air, that's what it is. Ventilation, heating, and air. The term is used to describe a complete home comfort system that's used to heat and cool, as well as provide indoor air quality. All those things, it's just not being cool, it's just not being warm. It is about the air quality that's in there and the exchange of humidity with it, particularly in a region like this. All right? It can be easily confused with the term of air conditioning, right? But that's not it. That's only one part of it. Air conditioning is on one. It's an entire broader system that may or may not include air conditioning. In this case, it does, of course, with it. So HVAC is just not one thing. It's a lot of things. And as they described in their proposal, it's a lot of things with the system. An air handler is an important part of what comes next, so I want you just to identify that. An air handler is part of the system. It's responsible for circulating the air in your house, okay? In a way, it breathes the air out, in, out, circulating it so that it comes back as a constant temperature. Through the ductwork, the air handler is the home's lungs, right, that move through it. Air handlers also work with air conditioners and heat pumps and remove, an important thing, remove heat from the air. Because when heat hits cool, what happens?
Condensation.
Correct, exactly. So the air handler is critical to get the heat out of the system, and obviously when Freon, whatever, is running through the system, it is creating heat. So there's a constant cooling process that goes on, and the air handlers are responsible for that. So evaporator coils to get the moisture out. And in an environment that you all live in, absolutely, it's important. And it's one of the things they said, look, you have all this stuff, this is what we need to do. Okay. Encapsulation. Kind of, you know what that is, right? So it is a heavy, heavy polyurethane barrier that is taped and sealed. It may go up the walls of it. It may even include encapsulating the rafters underneath where there's insulation. And usually there is some sort of dehumidifier that's in there and wired in that kicks on when humidity reaches a certain level under the house, and that's what they recommended for it. So you can see, as we went back to HVAC, it is a system that they're talking about from top to bottom for the house. Okay.
So air handlers and dehumidifiers.
Correct. Right. In the recommendation, and she says, okay, let's get this done. And they do with it. So they take their design, they implement that design, change all the things that we mentioned, bring in a subcontractor, which they, bring in for things like encapsulation, which they do, and then they're done. When they're finished with this, remember she buys the house in the spring, goes through the summer. This is kind of finished about late August, 1st of September. She's walked through the house, then she looks up at the grates and sees raindrops forming on them. Goes in another room, sees them. Another room sees them. So there's water droplets that are forming on the air vents coming in. Calls them, says, oh, there's water in the house. Say, well, we're out to look at it. So they do, and they say, look, you've got metal. These are the metal, and they're going to different temperature. All the. We're going to change them all out to be vinyl. That's going to take care of it. With it, kind of summer turns into fall. She's seeing a little bit of still some of the, droplets and things around and all, but the heat kicks in. The air is not on. Goes through winter, comes out the other side in the spring. The air conditioners come back on and all that. You know the drill. Here we are, you know. She begins to notice as she's in the house that the walls are wet. The walls feel wet, damp. That there's kind of a bubbling of some of the paint on the trim. That there's some shiplap ceilings in one of the rooms, and all of a sudden they're disconnecting at the joints with it.
What time of year is this?
This is spring. Spring. Air conditioner now is kicking in. You're, 80.
Well, we only get like 1 month of heat.
Right,
Of
right,
using the
exactly.
heater,
But
and then the rest of
this,
the
for the
heat,
purposes of
so.
this, it's the spring. She begins noticing this after the winter, that there are some problems with it. Calls them back, says, hey, come on out here and check this out. I think there's a problem here, with it. It just feels, there's something. And she's also noticing, like on her paintings and stuff, there's kind of like a sweat, or she's feeling it. She senses that there's some moisture everywhere in the house. They say, well, look, we're going to change out some thermostats. We're going to do these things. But everything's fine. It's just kind of the system kind of rotating in, breaking in, all this. It's going to be okay, with it. So we checked it out. It's fine. It's all good. She hires a guy to come help her do some things inside the house. Kind of a well-known handyman in and around. Handyman's kind of maybe not the right term. I mean, the guy's a skilled carpenter, but he does lots of different things with it. And he's there one day, and he looks over and he sees some of this bubbling moisture around. And he gets close to her and says, "There's something wrong here. Feel this. Touch this. Do you see that? Come outside. There's ceilings, trim." She's going, "What? There's a problem here. You need to have someone look at this with it." Well, she does have someone look at it, and she finds out that their house essentially is a rainforest. That there's a variety of installation problems according to this inspection, including the fact that they ran a cold air duct into the attic, and were pumping. So when you cut the air conditioning on, the 140-degree attic was getting cold air with it, which was
actually a vent in there?
Yep.
Okay.
All the way to it. So, which was
the vents were, or the ductwork is just running through the attic, or they're
running
actually
to it with an opening in it. So there was essentially creating a rainforest effect as things heated up, the moisture. And three other things, or a handful of other things. One, the dehumidifier in the encapsulated basement was never connected. So it was not running. It was supposed to be kicked in, based on the humidity measurements of it. It was not operational. There were torn seams in the encapsulation. They were not glued down. So there was no encapsulation there. The air handlers were essentially sending in super chilled cold into the house very quickly as kind of it was designed to be a very efficient, cool the house real quick. But what it was doing, it was operating in a method that was super cooling the house and essentially making the walls moist because it was bringing the temperature. The cold air was being trapped in the walls with it. And as a result, the moisture content of the sheetrock and of the wood had increased to this point that they were buckling and bubbling and things of that nature. Mold is seen in certain corners. And in fact, she goes to the doctor because she's having a kind of a respiratory problem with it. And it's pretty much diagnosis. You're reactive to the mold. That's there because she's asked those questions, during it.
And all of the ductwork and everything's completely new. They installed. There's nothing left from
the majority of it is, yeah. So, based on that, based on the analysis of what's there, the finding is that the system that was designed by them was not capable of actually heating or cooling the square footage of that house, and nor was it installed properly with it.
So from the start, the design was
Correct.
always going to fail.
That's the analysis of an expert on it, and that the whole thing needs to be torn out. And it's created a problem environment in there, including damaging the art, the fabric on expensive couches, pillows, things of that nature with it. Lawsuit. Mary sues the HVAC system based on 2 claims, okay? One, that her house is physically damaged as a result of their work, right? The property damage of that. The second is of the personal damage that has occurred with it. So 2 things, health being part of it. We'll talk about the other. So that's that's what's filed. Okay.
So my question is,
Yeah.
when they had the proposal, they designed initially before they did any work.
Yep.
They designed a system that was supposed to work. What was there a check on that, or did they just design it saying, "Oh yeah, we know what we're doing. This will work"?
Yes.
Is there
The
a
latter.
person that's supposed to double check the design work?
What would you expect? Let me put it that way.
So
Yeah.
they
I
didn't
mean,
put
none
in
of us
what
are
she paid
HVAC.
for, right?
What? Say that again, Dave.
Whatever she signed off for them to do is what they actually
Is what they
did.
did.
They didn't
Right. Right.
fudge the.
They came here and said, "This is the design."
But it's based on their recommendation.
Right. This is the design. All the things that you say about efficiency and things that's going to work for you. We're going to do these 3, 4, 5 things. 100 grand plus. Okay. So it happens. It's installed and done. So.
And you
with
said
it.
they used a subcontractor?
Yeah. Company, lots of different
That was
specialties that they have, like the encapsulation, where they would bring somebody else in to do that.
And that subcontractor only did that, right?
But it would be, yeah, for the purposes of this,
Okay.
you know, but it would be under their design and specifications and supervision. So here's the failed to properly design a system, right? Installed a HVAC system, cold air in uninsulated attic space, right? Failed to properly install the encapsulation system. There's a variety of things. Failed to properly maintain the system, about the vendor contracts of what was happening underneath, or diagnosed the non-performance of the system. They had been out and looked at it a number of times, but never had recommended any changes with it. Failed to properly manage the system. The cooling cycle was constantly removed humidity by fan system cycling on and off, prevented the air handler from removing moisture from the air.
So multiple visits and the humidifier not being installed was never identified.
Correct.
By them.
After the fact.
After multiple visits.
After multiple visits. Correct. Okay. Company says, wait a minute. We know what we're doing. We warranted everything as we did. You know, we designed this, went to her for approval. According to her needs, this is what we designed. It's the house.
No. She's not a subject matter expert on if their design spec would do what they're claiming. That's why I was asking if there was actually any type of.
It's the house. We did the right thing. Everything that we did was according to spec, specification, wiring, all these things. We did the right work. We stand behind our work with it.
Except for
if there was a problem, we made adjustments when called. If there were others that needed, fine, you know, with it. But what we did fine. If there was a problem with it, if something in the law says, if a worker did something incorrectly or wrong, that's on them. That our work was fine with it. So if there's an error somewhere in there, that's another matter. That's not the system design issue or anything like that. So we're not liable for what happened to this house or Mary's problems for it.
But the results of the other expert found that the design itself was flawed from the beginning.
Correct.
How long was she in the house with the old system?
Only a few months.
And she didn't have any issues.
Because there was those symptoms weren't there with
Right.
the old system.
When you buy a house, there's always a list of inspections and things like that happen within HVAC systems. Is one of the things. It's a major category, and the bank looks at it, and everybody
There
looks
was no
at it.
mold found.
Right. So
It's
someone
like-
comes and looks at it. How's the wiring? How old is it? Whatever. Is it warranty? Whatever the parts right. And she saw that report. After, of course, when you buy the house, and she says, "Is this old? It's been here 7 years. It's in this environment. A moist swamp-like environment. With it." So she was worried about bringing her artifacts into the house in a highly, moist. So she said, "Yeah, let's get real efficient."
But that's a good question because you said it was August, so she was in there for a few months
Yeah.
across the hot summer.
Correct.
So was it happening before?
Correct. Mm.
I mean, did she? I mean, I don't. This is.
They don't
kinda
finish.
out of
They
this-
don't finish it until August.
Oh, I thought that's when she
No.
pulled them out. Okay.
So,
Yeah, they
How
don't
long-
finish
how long
it
did it
until
take
late
to
August, early September.
does she have insurance, like homeowners insurance on? I mean,
That's one of those things that you would not know.
Right.
Yeah, that has no bearing on but you can guess if you own a house.
That's
Okay.
we figured.
Right. If you operate a business, but that's not a point of discussion in a civil lawsuit.
Well, in this case, if they're saying that it was the individual, isn't the HVAC company still responsible for the individuals that they hired and subcontracted?
Yeah,
So
but there's a
we
little
still-
caveat in the construction world about if
But that-
somebody, a bad worker or whatever, with it. So they're
Well,
kind
I
of claiming
explained
that. Yeah.
the
With it.
humidifier not being turned on, but not it being
But-
designed incorrectly.
Right.
But they should lose some of that protection only because they were called a couple times. If the first time,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
if
first
they were
time
there
they
multiple times
complained-
and never identified
Yeah, if
that
the first
a
time
vital
they
piece of
complained-
equipment was installed.
All right, let me,
Yeah.
we'll jump to the end and then we'll talk to the part. I wanted to set the stage. So, she says, look, the bad design, all this created this situation, right? They say, no, not. We stand behind our work. Whatever the problem is, there's a whole lot of other explanations for why it is with it. The expert that she hired to look at everything goes looking in the files of the HVA system, asks for it, the manual J calculation, and doesn't find one. And the manual J calculation is a very specific analytical process involved in the HVA system installation. And it essentially takes in a variety of data: size of rooms, number of people that are living in here, what the rooms are used for, all distilled to a calculation, which then when it's run through it tells you, as an HVA contractor, what size unit you need to put in there, how many, and even gives you kind of an understanding of how it wires, because it takes a room by room analysis. A hallway is different from a kitchen, right? The air return would be different from that, from a great room, from a room on the back porch of the sun. So region, temperature, all that's in this calculation, right? Actually, the proper method for sizing.
So it didn't exist,
It did not exist.
or
For
was
that-
it didn't physically exist. Then, or-
It was not.
That algorithm wasn't ran for that house.
When they
Or
went
it
to
was
look for
missing,
it,
or it was missing.
it was
right?
not there.
Yeah.
And no one says that it was.
No one said it ever existed.
Right.
And there
No,
was no.
no one on the company side says it was. So, well, that's a guidance thing,
So
We do this a lot. So, and we knew what was in there prior.
gotcha.
So it
and
seems
no
like
inspection after it was installed
Well, yeah, there would be inspections after it was installed
by the company.
by the company. Right.
And they didn't know that the humidifier or the
the system wasn't complete.
system
yet.
wasn't
Right,
complete.
wasn't connected.
It wasn't
underneath.
connected.
Right.
They didn't know.
Right.
No checklist.
No.
And do they have any proof that if it was connected correctly, that the system wouldn't have failed?
No.
So it's the HVAC company, like they're negligent. They didn't do their due diligence.
All right, well, here's the first. I mean, the HVAC, all they say is, we did the right job at the right time with the right work. We know what we're doing, and it was fine. That the construction of the house, we could have come, we were there, we could have come back, there were lots of different things, but this was not our responsibility for it.
It wasn't their responsibility to install a system that they designed to a certain specification?
Said it was right.
But it wasn't
Now,
right.
all right, well, let me give you a
wasn't-
couple arguments, then we're going to jump to the things that we need to talk about for the next 30 minutes with it. One, plaintiff says, the roadmap's right here. A independent HVAC contractor comes in. In fact, even someone who was not necessarily trained understood the problem of the moisture collection. The house had become a sponge. It became a sponge because the air quality had been compromised because of an inadequate system, and essentially was not equalizing the air pressure between inside and outside. And what happens? It gets trapped. And there's inexplicable, decisions that are made. Why are you sending an air conditioning duct to the attic? Why don't you know that something you recommended is not working? And how do you recommend, when there's water droplets, a sure sign of an issue of condensation, that's a matter of events. This was not installed properly according to what was needed. There was not the appropriate calculations done. From the get-go, it was a problem waiting to happen. As a result, she's had to move out of the house.
Was that a health issue for her respiratory?
Well, that and to take her stuff out of the
Yeah,
house.
did the art get
Right.
damaged?
Yes.
Okay, so
Fabrics, all of it becomes a sponge. So she packs up and leaves the house, but gets another house to rent, but still has the mortgage on this house and is now paying rent, is now storage and cleaning for things, and is figuring out how to renovate. And the recommendation on the renovations run high.
And she's wanting all of that to be paid for by the HVAC.
Those are the damages. It's one category of damages. So, but first, that's their position is the responsibility for all of this lies with the HVAC company. The HVAC company says, no, you're not taking into consideration all the things that occur here with the weather and the house and the age of its construction, and the fact that HVAC systems are things that are constantly tweaked and changed and added. This kind of only went on not even for a year. We came out every time that we were called and looked at it. We were responsive. We warranted everything, the materials, whatever. This is not our problem. This is something is the house. This is that problem with it. So to be responsible for that we shouldn't be held responsible for it. Our work was right.
But they're just saying that. They're not providing a subject matter expert or anything to actually
They
say.
are the experts.
Well, obviously they aren't. If they,
Well, they, as I saw in that, they hold themselves as an expert on HVAC, certified
but they're
installers,
saying
all this.
construction of the house. They're not bringing any subject matter
No.
expert saying that.
No,
the house-
that's their position right there.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
They're not. They're just saying it. I can say anything. I can.
Okay, that's their position. Okay.
May I take a quick restroom break?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So, I think just by the nodding, but I'm going to get a show of hands, the first issue is liability. Is the HVAC company liable for what the plaintiff is suggesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is this all the information we got?
I don't
My
know.
question is, did they have a third party run a manual J
Yes.
on it and it came up, did it come up that?
Well,
their
third
specifications?
party, not that some independent came over, they went and hired an expert and said, calculate this out. And the calculation came back that this is the inappropriate size for this. Okay.
I don't know. if
So
it's-
third party, yeah, they were paid by the plaintiff, to come and do it, to figure it out, So,
The original home inspection, were there any structural issues noted?
nope.
Okay. And you said the house was 10 years old?
about when it was bought. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Was the system installed bigger than the previous system or smaller?
It's actually bigger.
Well, I know, I used to be a handyman in Daniel Island,
Yeah.
and I've had to
Right.
go through stuff like this. Sometimes there is an issue where if your air conditioning cools your house too quickly,
Right.
it's not going through, it could not go through a cycle of dehumidifying
Correct.
the house.
And that's part of
It's
the problem
cooling
here.
it, but not dehumidifying.
That's right. That's part
So
of the
it has to
problem.
be set up so that it, even when it gets to this right temperature, it's still running to dehumidify. the
Correct.
house.
The point is they had the spec to calculate all that.
Right.
In theory.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
like that's what they're claiming. They're
Right.
claiming they designed a perfect system.
Okay.
That and the air going in
All
the
right.
attic makes
Jill?
no sense.
What do you think?
I'm a little off, and I know in the South that they don't last as long as they do in the North,
Yeah.
where I'm from. But if the house is 10 years old and they said that the system was 7 years old,
Yeah.
that math isn't mathing to me. Do they really only last 3 years?
Not necessarily. I mean, it
10
depends, but 10
That's what
years,
I'm saying,
10
like,
years
it
is
just-
about
That
the-
AC should have been okay.
Right.
Right.
It just seems odd that it was replaced at 3 years old too.
Okay, well, let's go back and examine how the decision that happened. New house, coming to the South for the first time to live, bringing your treasures with you.
No, not
Right.
that. But backing up, the house is about 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that on the inspection it was a 7-year-old unit.
So what happened for the first 3 years?
Exactly. That's
Right.
the part I'm.
Did they not have air conditioning?
I don't know, they may have been replaced at some time after the first 3 years of another owner. or
Yeah, I was just
so-
curious. It was
Yeah,
not
right.
computing in my head.
Right,
I don't
got
know.
it. Yeah, I got it.
I mean
Right.
that had me off too, but
It could have been the
you know,
original
people-
system was too small.
especially in like a $6 million, $3 million, whatever, they want new stuff.
Right.
Like I
Okay, all right, well, let me, so that, just take that bug away, is that the system that's there is good for about 7 years, you're 3 years past it. Okay, so just, I can change the facts.
Yeah, I just.
Okay, well, I don't want you to stumble over that.
I was just
so.
trying to think, was there a problem?
The point to know is that there was a recommendation about
There was a
doing
just-
it.
there
There was
was
a recommendation
justification.
about it. It wasn't, they did not deny the sale or financing or anything as a result of it. And if you've ever had a home inspection, you know there's a lot of speculation in some of those reports with it. But
there was no
nevertheless, it was
speculation
there.
ever
And
on
her reaction to that was,
Yeah, right. Got it.
right, okay. All right, okay. So liability,
Yes.
yes, yes,
Yes.
okay, now.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Damages, there's a variety of damages according to the law, right? And a judge would instruct you on the different types. I'm gonna give you 3 to work on for a minute. One is we call the things you can count, okay? How much did it cost to replace the unit? How much did it cost to replace the walls and floors and molding? How much did it cost to clean the art and painting? How much was lost of value in those things? How much money did it cost you to go rent another place? How much money were you paying in order to keep up this mortgage? Things we can count, right? Okay. In the things we can count category, called compensatory damages, I like things we can count better, is $1.2 million for all of those. Some are a projection for replacement, some are actual cost of rent and mortgage of things that have already been paid for and done. But essentially, to get that house back, you know, is somewhere close to almost $800,000 because of the moisture, mold, and ripping out and redoing, plus being out of the house for almost 16 months at this point in the story, paying rent and mortgage and all these things. So the things you can count, you know, for this are 1.2 million. You would see projections from experts as well as sales receipts and rent receipts. So those are things on the table.
That is a hard number that you
That's a
can-
hard number, right, right. So, all right, 1.2. Now, The judge will say you can go beyond those things because the law says there's a lot of other damages. Time, irritation, pain, suffering, ones we're very familiar with, with it. Stress. So the feelings part of it.
Now, how do you estimate that? Or is
Well,
that based
that's
on-
exactly what you got to do.
Oh.
No. Okay. So feelings are a part of it, but that's not really a good term with it. So what do you call it? If you had to say, what would you call these things?
Emotional damage.
Emotional damage? Anyone else? What would you call it?
Just the stress and distress of the whole situation.
Okay. All right. Stress.
Now, in the hard numbers was her health and all that in
Nope.
that? Okay.
Oh,
So then
Okay.
that would be part of the stress part because
They allow
she
you to
has
look at health in a
potential
different way because health can both be immediate, but it also can be long-term.
Right.
yep.
Okay. So things you can count are,
Okay.
right, the accountant,
But
the-
you can count
the
stuff
business
up to
side
that
of
point,
it.
can't you?
Do what?
You have receipts and stuff from any treatment or whatever.
You do. Those are actual medicals, but there's also, you are allowed to consider the future of that condition.
Right.
But
And
that you can't
treatments.
put the current into the 1.2, or you can't add it into.
No, we're gonna separate them out. So that's the third one, which is the health. Because remember, she said they're actually suing on two things. This one, the stress and emotion, actually kind of overlaps into both with it, but it's a separate category to think about with it. And health is too, because health is really specific, with it. So health. Okay, so here we have, there's three. We know what this is, 1.2. Out of the house, financing both the mortgage as well as paying the rent, having to move your stuff, clean your stuff, throw your stuff away, right? Clothes, whatever. How do we deal with that within this calculus? Kim knows. What do we look at? What do we need to know to come up with a number?
I mean,
For the non-hard count.
Yeah, we'll take them one at a time. We'll do stress and emotion, which is the pain and the headache and the inconvenience. And then that could have, your bank account, worrying about how you pay for that, the worry, the stress, all those things, that are part of it. Gail? Gwen, excuse me.
I was like,
gosh.
Long day.
I guess that number's kind of subjective to her experiences, there's nothing to really, is there any other cases?
Not that you wouldn't hear.
Yeah.
Well, in a case like this, you wouldn't hear that.
Okay.
And they don't put a number to it to ask, and you have to decide.
Well, they do, but I'm curious in how you read this situation in terms of what you know about her, what you know about the situation, and what you know about how.
Anything about her.
Pardon?
We really don't know anything about her.
Well, she was an affluent,
Right.
66
Yeah, she's an affluent person, so it's not like she's trying to hit the lottery. She's trying to be
But
made
she's
whole.
not affluent enough that she bought the house in cash
But-
either.
I mean, the reason why I say that is
Yeah.
she decided to just uphold and move to Charleston. A lot of people do that from Ohio. They don't expect the conditions here, living long term. Living here is a different beast than like anywhere. Like I have a sister in
Okay.
California. That heat is like 0%
Yeah.
humidity. You can stand out there all day.
Right.
There are factors that before you decide to move to a whole other side of the country.
Well, she did. Buys
that's
a
what I-
house and makes a decision to change the HVAC system in there in order to deal with the climate that she's living in.
So because she's so like yippy on that, I'm like, I don't know how much aside from like
Okay.
if she was working like
No.
and so
No.
I mean honestly
She's living essentially off of both trust fund and investments and things of that nature.
so the emotional stuff I feel like she didn't really think about her relocation before going in there, so I think that was self-imposed.
Okay.
Personally.
Go
I
ahead.
don't think that should be held to account because it's not her fault. What happened.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was like. I don't really know her, but like if I was like her friend, I wouldn't be like,
Okay.
you know, you probably should.
Well, you're on the jury, so you got to make
You know,
a decision.
well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
Okay.
as a juror, I don't.
Okay. Go ahead,
My
Dave.
question is there a law that states how much she can receive?
No, and that's the thing about civil
It's a civil
juries,
court, so it doesn't matter.
is that you have to put the evaluation on it.
What'd you say?
So the number you would know, and you know here, is from
Weak, I
the all the additive stuff. It's 1.2.
I don't know. My gut is like 250, and I don't know why. I have-
250,000?
Yeah, like I
Okay.
have no rhyme or reason to that.
Right.
It's hard to like. Some people are super attached to their stuff.
Right.
Like to me, it's stuff. You know, I.
Okay.
I don't know,
But
but
I think I think some of it is us looking at it as her stress.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at it as, what are we taking out of this company that did all this?
Right.
They did $1.2 million worth of damage for them to sprinkle $250,000 on her pain and suffering.
oh, we haven't gotten to our house stuff yet.
Well,
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike. Go
well,
ahead.
but
Go
so
ahead.
my thinking is
Yeah.
that whatever the damages they caused,
Right.
I think whatever she gets for the stress part of it should be
A
similar to
percentage.
that.
I think it should be a percentage.
I think it should be very
Okay.
similar to that, because that is kind of somewhat the penalty for, you did all this, it's going to cost you that,
Plus more.
plus it should be double that because you put this on this person
I-
for whatever the reason, you know.
I don't think it should be even close because one would assume if you have all these assets, you're going to have it insured. So you can't.
Yeah, but
That's not something. I mean,
And that's an
right.
assumption for me. Is,
Yeah, no,
well,
no, you
why,
can-
why
you
would you
can-
have all the stuff here and not have some sort of
Okay.
protection against it? Because
The
a thief could go in there.
The HVAC company's insured too, so.
Well, I know, but I'm
Okay,
just
all right,
trying to
wait,
say-
let me, all right. 250 just on a gut, right? You're feeling that with it. Equal
saying
to the compensatories.
equal to the
Equal to the, Dave?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, do we have, are there specific health concerns that she?
That's
That's
See,
the
that's
next
a
one.
separate
thing.
That's the next
Separate?
category.
That's
Right.
Okay.
This is the pain, suffering, aggravation, irritation, stress, all those things, which the judge would tell you are losses for people. If you stayed up night worrying about this or whatever, that is a loss. In other words, you were changed as a result of this incident.
They're negligence.
Well, I would go with probably what Kim said, you know, if you want.
To,
See, that, and I'm not against that. I'm not.
no,
against
no, I know, I
nothing.
know.
I'm just saying it.
It is good to express your opinion. That is the point of this. So you were honored for having a view on this thing. And you get the focus group honor some for that.
But is this something that made her go broke, too? Is
It's
all
not
the-
like
all
Okay,
the,
all right.
the results of this will not truly hurt her more than time.
Okay,
and
all right.
Maybe some emotional.
All right, what if you know and you heard testimony that as a result of all the cash outlay that she's had to go through, that is actually, and her changing condition, financial situation, and that this is factored into it, that it has impacted her
Okay.
ability to pay
And change
for
her
all of it.
lifestyle and the way she used to live
See,
in the
it's,
60s.
see, and that's a
Right.
little bit different than what I understood before. So if she
Okay.
had some sort of testimony and I'm exposed to that, then
Okay, so how has it changed her?
it should be in the middle. That like I don't
Okay.
know.
I'd say no less
500.
than half of the compensatory
Yeah,
damages.
I'm in between the two.
That's
At
what I'm saying.
250 and 500-ish
Yeah,
area.
okay, right, okay. Gwen, better known as Gail? No?
I think she should get a lot more
Okay, explain.
because she hired them as the experts.
Okay,
She was not anticipating any of that to happen. My question is, did that happen in the house before? There was no damage. There was nothing that indicated.
there was nothing that indicated that any of
That any
the,
of
the
that
old
ever
system
happened.
was an issue or that there
And there was
was
nothing
major
wrong.
water damage in the house
Right.
before.
There was nothing wrong with the house prior to that, based on the inspections, right?
Right,
Okay. I would say $1 million.
$1 million and
I
the,
would.
okay, all right. Well, I mean, Mike kind of rounded up on that figure too.
Yeah, I said the same.
Yeah.
And honestly, in a jury situation, because yes, they should have insurance to cover up whatever.
Like this
If someone said $1 million, I would just be like,
Arnold
whatever,
likes
give
it.
them $1 million.
You didn't work for the insurance company. did you?
Well, I'm just saying, like, if I'm saying if someone threw out a number, I
Right.
wouldn't be against it because in the end, they messed up, and they're trying to say they didn't mess up, so they need to be held accountable. Like,
Okay, I got it. Yeah, absolutely.
my gut
I mean,
feeling-
you're there. You voted to hold them accountable. That's what the liability
And
decision
that's part of
is.
what that number is about for
Yeah.
me, is to say, you're right, and there's a lot of different factors. So, okay, maybe, the dollar amount, but as far as saying, hey, this company is liable, she went through this, I think it should be the same as the compensation.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So everyone said, Joe, you kind of went
Yeah, I was in
250,
between.
600.
Yeah, I was in between the 250 and the 100%, like in the middle somewhere.
Okay,
I'd say no less than half of the compensatory.
half, okay.
No
So
le- no
okay,
less
So
than that.
600 is
Yeah,
what you're saying?
sure,
Okay.
yeah, for
All
all
right.
intents and purposes.
Dave?
I would say half would be the high end.
Okay,
I just don't think emotionally, I mean, that's a lot of money for 16 months of trouble.
well,
I guess,
it's not over yet.
Okay.
See, at
So
the
it-
point of
it
the, yeah, that
continues
it's
past 16.
continuing, no one's
Then
moved back
it would
in,
keep- yeah.
or, all those things. All right, okay.
but mind you, the figure isn't static. We still got the third part to factor in.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, all right, third, good, perfect timing. All right, ready? Health issues, she began coughing, had some respiratory distress, and that was highly unusual for her. And this is before she actually knew exactly what the problem was with it and went to see a doctor. She had already seen black mold on the side of a door and then the door jamb and all. Didn't really think about it other than that shouldn't be there, with it, but goes to a doctor and the doctor says, do you have any problem with, because this is a reaction to the mold. So obviously you have a system that you're reactive to this. So it's triggering that for you, that is your system. And that's part of you now, with it, that you have this respiratory issue as a result of that. Now,
It's going to be a chronic issue for the rest of her life.
it's not going away.
Okay.
Right, now, getting out of the environment and doing all that is a big plus, but that you have you are now diagnosed with being reactive to mold, that what you become in contact with it, this is what's gonna happen. It can get worse. You're 66 years old, with it. So one of the things we worry about in people this age is respiratory issues, pneumonia, anything, COVID, all of it hits this age demographic harder. So this is a warning to you that your future has this in it.
Right.
Okay.
now I have a question about
Yes.
the figure for that last third. Do we have to give that a hard figure, or can we state that it would need to be covered in perpetuity?
No, cannot do
It
that.
needs to be a hard number.
It needs to be a hard number, and that's the hard one. You have to kind of look into the future, and that's all you're going to know about her health. That's all you would know about her health.
So if that's the case, it should be at least whatever the 1.2, at least the 1.2,
I would say 100% of her medical bills for anything because of that. And
we can't get that. We don't know what's gonna.
Well, let's say at this point her medical bills are in the hundreds of dollars.
Right.
Because it's just been a diagnosed
Right,
situation,
okay.
and in one that has been is being addressed. And the way you address it is you change your environment, you don't go in this, but that you have this problem.
Yep.
It's like being allergic to something. You have this
Right.
problem, and you are in an environment where this is it. So this is visited you and is now part of you.
And the other thing that I look at for that part of it is, yeah, we don't know what it is, and if she lives a clean life, it might not affect her. But now that's jumped into that second one, because now she has a condition she has to worry about that she never had to worry about before. She may have had to worry about it. Maybe something else would have triggered it later. But we know factually that this air conditioning stuff did. So I think that solidifies the stress part of it, because that's the stress. She's going to have stress. She had stress because of everything that happened, and now she has the forward stress of the health. And so I think, to me, I think all three should be equal.
So
Kim?
this is where I probably have too much background information.
Okay.
If she was a trust fund baby and has never worked, she's not eligible for Medicare.
That's, you wouldn't know
No, no.
any of that.
I know, I wouldn't know
Right.
it, but these are the
One
thoughts
could
that
make
are
that
going on.
assumption though.
Right.
If we
But-
were in a jury. and
But this
she
is
had
the
that.
thoughts that
Yeah.
go in the back of my head. If she's
Okay.
paying for private insurances do cap out. They will only pay up to X number of dollars
Right.
over your entire lifetime.
Right,
So, and if she's 66, that's not old.
right.
You know, she projected could live. I mean, she could get hit by a bus
I like
tomorrow.
you. I like
or,
that. That's-
She
Well,
lived
she
100.
could exactly, or she could live to 100. But 66 is not old in the grand scheme of
And if
Americans.
anyone has ever been in a hospital and has
Yeah.
seen a daily cost, like if she had an,
Oh, yeah.
an extended stay
Okay.
due to
Like-
the cost
So,
of this,
Kim, what
We're
what you're
looking-
saying is that her
Yeah.
medical costs may be higher than what we averagely think. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
would probably lowball this at 2 million.
Okay.
Because like we're looking at, okay, now we've got chronic respiratory issues. Is she gonna end up on oxygen?
Okay.
Like, do you know how much an oxygen compressor is for your house? That's like
Okay.
mucho gusto money. That's $1,500 a month that she may be coming for out of pocket
Right.
if she loses her insurance coverage. And this is like, and if she's already symptomatic from this mold, like that's bad news.
Okay. All right.
So that number, I would shoot I would
Okay.
say minimum of 2 million
Okay.
for health.
All right. Robert.
$2 million sounds right.
Okay. Jill.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think, even though there is the emotional side to things, I definitely think the health issue is higher.
Is
for
that
sure.
is a higher issue?
Definitely.
me just knowing I've had health issues.
Okay.
And I've had insurance and not had insurance.
Yeah.
So knowing that cost, like this is kind of like where I'm kind of like, it should be double whatever that the 1.2.
Okay.
I mean, like it.
All right.
It should be more because the cost we don't know. It could be less, but it could be astronomically
Okay.
more.
All right.
So
All
I
right.
don't
Good.
think it should be
Okay.
Based on the first number, though. Why do we keep basing everything by the first number?
because it set the
Just 'cause it's in front of
because
us.
I like to
Yeah,
set
I mean,
book
yeah.
benchmarks
Okay.
and that's how
It's
it
in
works.
front of us.
That's the only reason why.
Well, value is hard to assess.
Yeah.
You know.
And
So
They could have had a small, she could have had a small house and.
total on everything or for the health? 3.5. Okay. All right. Okay. Indeed. All right. I'm going to give you a little bit of argument, and then we'll be done. Or you can ask any questions that you want, or go back and think about something or whatever. But damage arguments are at the end. If you find liability, you know, they're going. We want you to find this responsible for this, this, and this. So it all comes as part of a package, basically, and the defense has their package. That we didn't do this, and let's start with the defense. This is a stretch, to say the least. You know, whatever caused this situation is far beyond anything that we provided a truthful and honest service to her with it. To Mrs. Jones called, agreed, checked off, and accepted our work. We were responsive to it when she had problems. This is a kind of a harsh environment with a 6,000 square foot house, which presents unique problems. So-
But no job, no.
Wait a minute, hold on. Our work was first class in terms of design, wiring, duct work, everything. Was it the construction of the house, the environment surrounding it? You saw that there's water. All of those things have to be taken into consideration in terms of as you start thinking about what happened to Miss Jones with it. So we contend that we have done nothing wrong. And we also contend that what they're asking for in terms of damages across the board is something that is rather fanciful given the situation and who you're considering this with. So we strongly believe that we have not done anything and that the damages that are being discussed here are way beyond the pale of anything that's either realistic or equal to the concerns that are there. Okay. Now, let me do the plaintiff, and then you can, then
So,
we can.
so that was the closing argument, I'm assuming, like some sort of closing.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Plaintiff says, Mary Jones came here to start a new life. She didn't expect she was going to get a poisoned house. The poisoned house came as a result of the shoddy workmanship, planning, calculation, execution by the HVAC company, up from the attic down to the crawl space. Nothing good in between. When your ceilings start raining, you have a problem. When your walls sweat, buckle, and crack, you got a real problem with it. When your material on your favorite couch that was in your grandmother's house begins to be stained, you really have a problem. And when you call the people that put it in and they say everything is fine, we'll tweak this, put some vinyl up here, then you're not being taken seriously with it. If it weren't for the sharp eye of somebody who came to do some work and then her follow-up on this, it is unbelievable to think that what would have happened to her house and her possessions. At least she was given by an expert a good warning about what was going on here and got out. But she didn't get out with her health. She took that problem with her. Mary's forever changed as a result of this. I don't care how you add it up, whether it's her bank account, how she lives, what her life is, her favorite mementos, her health, and the amount of lost time that's occurred as a result of this, because somebody was either stubborn or just wouldn't do what they were supposed to do. So we're asking you to take all three of these things and put essentially one number by them all, add them up to at least $3.6 million. That's total. Not only for the compensatories that are on our list, but everything else together.
That's triple the compensatory.
And here's our reason. We know what 1.2 is, don't we? We know the 1.2 and all the things that add up with that are part of what created category number 2. And category number 2 and category number 1 all flow into category number 3, which is health. They are all connected. One does not live independently of the other two. They should all be equally valued with it. Bricks and mortar, rent and mortgages, health, irritation, stress, aggravation, all are the same. So we want you to look at this holistically with one number, which is 3.4. So those are the two arguments.
If that was the closing arguments from each side, and from what you told us about the defendant,
Yeah.
it should be at least 3.6, just because they basically said we're perfect and we didn't do anything wrong, and they
Okay.
don't even want to be able to be held liable at all.
Okay.
I think this case is dead in the water when you say none of these problems existed before this HVAC company came in and did their work. That says that was on liability was on them 100%.
Okay.
There's no mold, no water, nothing.
Right.
They come in and say we're doing our job, and then that's
Okay.
when these problems start.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on board with all that.
All right, Kim.
Honestly, 3.6 is reasonable. Like I was saying, at least I would say 2 million towards health, because
Okay.
we got a long
Right.
life still to live.
Right. Dave?
I think that's right around the ballpark where we were in anyways,
Yeah.
without even knowing.
Right, yeah, indeed. That was kind of the check on the system here. Yeah. Jill?
I agree, like, we all had different opinions on the components.
Right.
But in total, I think we were all pretty much around that
Right,
figure.
and then General Mike?
Yeah, definitely, and I'm just appalled at the, like you said, the lack of
I was like, it should be at least
For the HVAC
3.6 if they're going to be that.
just
I
because they're,
I need to practice on my defense.
and it's totally a case of, like you said,
Okay.
you have 10 years of evidence that house was there 10 years with
No.
none of those problems. In 1 year, all of those problems.
It is not a disgruntled worker that caused that. I'll put it that way. It is not.
Good, okay.
There you go.
Gwen, you're gonna have the last word.
I agree.
Okay.
And it wasn't
Okay,
your
you're
tone;
comfortable.
it was just the fact that they didn't even provide any subject matter expert. They said they were the expert, and that they should just take.
Right.
You should trust.
And that's
them.
actually a term of law, of holding yourself out as an expert, you know, which is part of what they're advertising and their certifications and all they say they are. So,
But in this case, in the court, they should have brought some backup and say, "Oh yeah, we double checked this.
okay.
This is right."
All right.
Yeah.
One last thing. We can only spend 5 or 6 minutes on it. There's another category of damages.
Oh,
And somebody hasn't said it yet, but it usually comes up, which is called punitive damages. Now, these damages are all about the plaintiff. Punitive damages are a focus on the defendant's behavior, actions, and things. And usually, in order to,
You know my opinion on
wait a minute, it's not automatic. It's not automatic. The jury has to say, yes, the defendant was reckless and did things that should not have been done, which warrants a discussion of, and the word punitive comes from, right, punishment. I mean, it's all punitive damages. So that evaluation is about the conduct of the defendant and the jury's decision. One, were they reckless in what they did? And then two, if so, what level of compensation back to the plaintiff is sufficient to, one, send a message to make them not to do that again? So the first question is this something that rises, as they would say, to the level of a punitive discussion?
I would think so.
Yes.
I would have to agree. Yeah.
Yes.
My question is, have they had other lawsuits?
Wouldn't know. You would not know. Nothing about pattern or past or anything.
By the way you presented their case, I would think that they are unrepentant
Okay.
of their mistakes.
Okay.
I agree that they should.
Punitive should be, Mike?
Definitely.
Yes.
Okay, all right. We won't get into discussion of what, but if you went searching for a number, where would you?
I mean,
You had already decided on the specials and the compensatory. Where would you go searching for a punitive?
I'd say between $500,000 and $1 million.
How long does this trial and all that stuff? And
well, normally civil trials have like a set, like unless there's.
Yeah, there's no set time. It's a number of.
I mean, if you're to the point of discussing this, wouldn't we be?
Yeah, you come back and you hear actually more discussion on it. So there's a kind of a second trial on the punitive phase. We're not going to do that. But so I'm just curious about how egregious. Is this an oops, a bad, they were unrepentant? What is this? How?
at least $1 million.
It's not even a point of if it was an oopsie. It's the fact that they didn't even want to take responsibility for it at all.
So where would you land?
$1 million.
Ran the total up to $5 million total. That's
Yeah,
my
so-
opinion.
That was right.
Yeah, I
my
was gonna say
thought.
All right.
2.4.
I feel like at this point that would be a decision maker error, like that caused all. If you're going there,
Yeah.
that was the project lead, whatever. And so, I mean,
Yeah, look behind the organization. Where did this fall off?
that's why I'm like, well,
Yeah. Okay.
like $1 million.
All right. We're gonna have you back for the next one.
The metal grates got switched out to vinyl.
Yeah, that's
That to
what
me-
bothered me, I
Yeah,
think.
like
was
let's
that.
put a date on a
Well,
bullet.
my only thing is
and hope it works
there's
out
water.
okay.
Why would you not check the humidifier if there's any issues with it? Like,
Right.
do you not have something that says the humidifier is not even on, like
They don't have
in an
a
But
advanced
that's
system?
That's all.
Yeah.
Do they have a checklist? Yes.
But they didn't have the manual J.
No.
It was nowhere to be found.
No.
No, they're
That's the
too
other
they're
thing
too
that
good.
bothered me.
They know what they're doing.
Really, because most companies have a checklist of everything that has to be
Right.
inspected by, after the work is done.
Right.
But that's not necessarily. That wasn't a requirement. That's just more of a guidance for designing.
Well,
The designer should.
It should be. I'm just saying
Yeah.
they're like legally binding. There didn't
Well,
need to be a
let me
manual
put it this.
J.
I mean, if you're going to test the airflow, you're going to test the electrical.
But-
You're going to do all
But
those
what I'm
things.
saying is there is stuff that we can
Right.
define and stuff that we can't. It wasn't defined that a manual J needed to be present like physically at all ever.
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, the argument would say there's a standard in this, and the standard that is accepted by the Society of Heat and Air.
Yeah, but they could say, oh, it
is
is a
that this
calculation in my head.
calculation,
I mean,
this calculation be done. because it is the accepted calculation, just like a yardstick.
Well,
On the
it needs
quote,
to be
there-
But they're saying that we designed this, so
Right.
it's assuming,
They say, we know what we're doing and we
Right.
did
yeah,
it
that's the
right.
assumption that they would have factored that in at some point in
Right,
time.
right. They didn't break any law here. They
No.
just used their,
For practice.
right. And the plaintiff would say, and they were wrong.
And
They
that-
would say, no, we weren't.
But you don't have the paperwork.
Yeah, if that was, if that was documented somewhere.
It's all about the paperwork. All right, y'all are great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I told you, make sure your email address is on the back of your name tag so that the wonderful gift card gets to you this morning. Okay, all right. We'll keep you on the list. We invite you back for something else another time if you like with it. We appreciate your cooperation on this, particularly for the late show, which is always kind of harder with it. Y'all are good at this. Y'all can take it on the road. So, I appreciate your attention to the detail of it because there's a lot of it here. So,
There is a TV show. It was called Bull.
bull, yeah, which is a lot of bull. I mean, you would get arrested if you did any of that stuff in a courtroom with anybody. But
But
anyway.
it was very entertaining.
Watch.
You're from Philadelphia.
That's highly illegal and invasive.
South Jersey, definitely. Literally across the river from Center City.
My wife's family is Washington Township.
Yeah, it's one town away.
I grew up in Knox County.
Okay. Yeah, Washington Township's literally the next town over. Sewell, whatever you want to call all the different parts of it. But yeah, we're done. Thank you.
I apologize.
See you later, Gwen.
Yeah.
Gail.
Appreciate it. Pleasure.